Hey, amazing viewers! Thanks for clicking on Potter Paradox. Today's special feature is what if Dr. Strange found baby Harry before Hagrid did? Your support through likes, shares, and subscriptions helps us reach more story lovers around the world. Thank you for being part of this community. Now, let's escape into this wonderful story. Chapter 1, The Child of Two Magics. The New York sanctum shook. Not the normal tremors from Manhattan traffic or the subway rumbling beneath, but something deeper, like reality itself vibrated. Stephen Strange's hands froze mid-spell, the golden symbols dispersing around his fingers as his concentration broke. "Wong," he called, already striding toward the artifact chamber. "You feel that?" Wong appeared at the doorway, ancient tome still open in his hands. 3 separate dimensional breaches in the last minute. Something's tearing through the fabric. Strange grabbed his sling ring, sliding it onto his fingers with practiced ease. Where? Europe. Britain specifically. Wong moved to the scrying mirror, his fingers tracing sigils across its surface. A place called Godric's Hollow. Never heard of it. That's because you don't pay attention to magical communities outside our own, Wong said, giving Strange a disapproving look. It's an old wizarding settlement. Strange raised an eyebrow. Wand wavers. They hardly ever cause dimensional disturbances. Well, they've caused 3 tonight. Wong's fingers stopped moving as the mirror revealed a cottage, half destroyed, smoke rising from the rubble. And whatever happened there just killed 2 people. Powerful ones. Strange didn't waste another second. His hands circled, orange sparks trailing in their wake as he opened a portal directly to the scene. Monitor from here. I'll check it out. Strange, Wong started. I know. Don't interfere with their affairs unless absolutely necessary. Strange stepped through the portal. I'm just looking. The crisp autumn air hit him instantly, carrying the unmistakable scent of magical combat, ozone, burnt wood, and something darker beneath it all. Strange stood on a quiet street, cottages lining both sides, most dark except for a few with jack-o'-lanterns still glowing in windows. Halloween night. Strange approached the partially destroyed house cautiously, extending his senses. The magical residue was unlike anything he'd encountered before, raw, unrefined, yet incredibly potent. Not the structured energy of the mystic arts, but something wilder, more intent-focused. Wand magic, pushed to extreme limits. He stepped through the broken doorway, keeping his defenses raised. The interior showed signs of a brief but violent struggle. A man's body lay at the foot of the stairs, no visible wounds but unmistakably dead. Strange knelt briefly, noting the residual magical signature. A killing curse, instant death by magical command. Efficient. Terrible. Strange moved upstairs, following the strongest concentration of energy. The nursery door hung off its hinges. Inside, a woman's body lay sprawled on the floor, red hair fanned out around her. Like the man downstairs, no physical trauma, but the same magical signature of instant death. And then he heard it, a soft whimpering coming from the crib. Strange approached cautiously, his cloak shifting nervously around his shoulders. In the crib, a baby boy, no more than a year old, with a shock of black hair and bright green eyes that gleamed with tears. Most striking was the fresh, lightning-shaped cut on his forehead, bleeding slightly. "Hello there," Strange said softly, all his usual arrogance dropping away. The baby looked up, momentarily distracted from his distress. Strange extended his senses toward the child and nearly recoiled. The boy pulsed with magical energy, both the wild, intent-based magic of his parents, but also something else. Something dark and parasitic attached to that fresh wound. "What happened to you?" Strange murmured, carefully creating a small diagnostic spell above the child's head. The results made his blood run cold. Soul magic. The darkest kind. Someone had fractured their soul, and a piece had latched onto this child. A crash downstairs made Strange spin around, hands raised defensively. Heavy footsteps approached, too heavy for a normal human. Making a split-second decision, Strange gathered the child in his arms. The boy didn't cry out, just stared at Strange with those unnaturally bright green eyes. "I'm sorry, kid," Strange told him. "But whatever they have planned for you, I don't think they understand what's happened here." Outside, a motorcycle engine roared in the distance, growing louder. Strange needed no further prompting. His hand spun, opening a portal back to Camartage rather than the sanctum. The Ancient One would know what to do about this child with two magical natures and a darkness clinging to him. Strange stepped through with the baby just as a massive figure entered the nursery behind them. The portal closed, cutting off the start of a surprised bellow. "Master Strange," said a calm voice as his feet touched the polished wooden floors of Camartage. The Ancient One stood before him, hands clasped behind her back, regarding the bundle in his arms with intense interest. "I sensed your arrival. This is unexpected. I found him at the center of a dimensional disturbance in Britain. Wizarding community. Parents murdered." Strange held out the baby slightly. "But that's not why I brought him. He has a fragment of someone else's soul attached to him." The Ancient One's serene expression faltered momentarily. She approached, passing a hand over the child's forehead without touching him. The baby watched her, unusually calm. "Harry Potter," she said softly. Strange frowned. "You know him?" "I know of him. There was a prophecy among the wand wielders. A child born as the 7th month dies who would vanish the Dark Lord." She looked up at Strange. "It appears the prophecy was fulfilled tonight, but at great cost." "Then this." Strange gestured to the wand. "Is a fragment of this Dark Lord, yes. Very dangerous soul magic. They call them Horcruxes." The Ancient One gently took the baby from Strange. "And they will be looking for him. He's their savior now. They can't have him back," Strange said firmly. "Not with that thing attached to his soul. Their magic won't know how to handle it without destroying the boy." The Ancient One smiled slightly. "Since when do you care so deeply about the fate of one child, Stephen?" Strange looked away. "I don't. But I'm a doctor. And that thing is like a magical cancer. I can't just hand him back knowing they might make it worse." The Ancient One cradled Harry, who had fallen oddly silent, little hands reaching for the glowing amulet at her throat. "You're right that their methods would likely kill him to destroy the fragment. Our ways might offer alternatives." A commotion outside the chamber interrupted them. Wong burst in, looking uncharacteristically flustered. "Strange, what did you—" He stopped short, seeing the baby. "You stole a child." "I rescued him," Strange corrected. "And apparently prevented well-meaning wizards from condemning him to a life with a soul fragment eating away at him." Wong approached cautiously. "That's dark magic. Different from our dimensional energies." "Indeed," the Ancient One said. "Wong, prepare the mirror chamber. We need to contain this fragment before it bonds further with young Harry here." Wong nodded and hurried off. Strange watched the Ancient One curiously as she continued to study Harry. "What do you know about these wizards that I don't?" he asked. "They are an old magical tradition," she explained, focusing their abilities through wands, using Latin incantations to shape reality according to their intent. Efficient in some ways, limited in others. They've isolated themselves from the non-magical world for centuries. And this Dark Lord? A powerful wizard seduced by the darkest aspects of their magic. Not unlike Caecilius, but with different methods. Her fingers traced the air above Harry's scar. "This fragment isn't an accident. He was trying to create another Horcrux, to anchor himself to life even if his body was destroyed. Using a baby?" Strange felt genuine disgust. "The darkest magic requires the most innocent sacrifices," the Ancient One said sadly. Come. We must contain this before it takes deeper root. They carried Harry to the mirror chamber, where Wong had prepared a ritual space. Mirrors stood at cardinal points, reflecting and amplifying the dimensional energies that flowed through Camartage. We cannot destroy the fragment without risking the child, the Ancient One explained, placing Harry in the center of the array. But we can isolate it, prevent it from influencing him or drawing power from him. Strange nodded, taking position at one of the cardinal points. What do you need me to do? Focus the dimensional energies, she instructed. Create a pocket fold around the fragment, like a dimensional bubble that contains it without removing it. For the next hour, they worked in concert, Strange and the Ancient One channeling energies while Wong maintained the protective barriers around them. Harry remained surprisingly calm throughout, occasionally giggling as the colorful energies danced above him, unaware of the darkness they were fighting to contain. Finally, the Ancient One stepped back. It's done. The fragment remains, but it's sealed away from his consciousness and magical core. Strange approached, examining their work with his mystical senses. Where before the darkness had been actively intertwining with the baby's natural magic, now it sat isolated, a contained pocket of malevolence that couldn't spread its influence. It's still there, he noted. Yes. Only the one who created it can truly destroy it, or... She trailed off. There are methods, but none we would use on a child. Strange picked up Harry, who was now drowsy after the extended ritual. So what now? Return him to the wizards. The Ancient One was quiet for a long moment. They will have plans for him. Their prophecy child. Their symbol of hope. That doesn't answer my question. No, she said finally. I believe Harry Potter was brought to us for a reason. The convergence of our magical traditions in one child, it's unprecedented. And with that fragment sealed but still present, he needs protection and understanding that the wizarding world might not provide. Are you suggesting we keep him here? Wong asked incredulously. Camartage is no place for an infant. Yet it might be exactly where this infant belongs, the Ancient One countered. Stephen, what do you think? You found him for a reason. Strange looked down at the now sleeping child in his arms. He'd never considered himself father material, his hands were too damaged, his responsibilities too great, his personality too, well, strange. But looking at Harry, he felt an unexpected protectiveness. If we send him back, who would take him? Strange asked. From what I know of their customs, likely relatives. His parents were prominent figures in their society. Strange nodded slowly. Let me keep tabs on what happens in their community first. If they have a good solution, fine. If not. He looked down at Harry. I'm not saying I'd be a good guardian, but better me than someone who doesn't understand what he's carrying. The Ancient One smiled. Very well. We'll prepare a space for him here. Wong, would you, already making a list of everything we need, Wong sighed, but there was a hint of softness in his expression as he looked at the sleeping baby. 2 days later, Strange paced the library at Camartage, Harry balanced on his hip while he flipped through ancient texts with his free hand. They left him on a doorstep, he said incredulously to Wong. A doorstep. In November. Your scrying confirms this? Wong asked, trying to hide his amusement at seeing the normally aloof sorcerer juggling baby care and research. Yes. Their great wizard, Dumbledore, just left him with a letter for his muggle, non-magical, relatives. Strange bounced Harry absently when he fussed. The same relatives who, according to my research, despise magic and anything to do with Harry's parents. Wong raised an eyebrow. You've been thorough. I'm always thorough. Strange set down the book and fully focused on Harry, who was grabbing for his beard. They think the blood protection from his mother's sacrifice will keep him safe there. They don't realize the Horcrux complicates everything. So you've made your decision then? Wong asked, though he already knew the answer. Strange nodded. He stays with us. At least until he's old enough to make his own choice. He looked at Wong seriously. I'm going to need help. A lot of it. Wong actually smiled. You have it. Though I draw the line at diaper duty. Too late, Strange said, handing Harry over. I changed the last 3. Your turn. Raising a magical child in a sanctuary of dimensional sorcery presented unique challenges. By age 3, Harry had already accidentally teleported himself to the roof twice, turned Wong's robes purple during a tantrum, and somehow summoned every book about dragons from the library shelves simultaneously. Strange adapted with surprising dedication. Though he maintained his duties as master of the New York Sanctum, he split his time between there and Camartage, where Harry primarily lived under the watchful eyes of Wong and the other masters. Strange's quarters expanded to include a connecting room for Harry, filled with both magical texts and normal children's books. Again, 4-year-old Harry demanded, sitting cross-legged opposite Strange in the training yard. Patience is the first lesson of magic, Harry, Strange reminded him, though his lips twitched with amusement. You said that yesterday, Harry pouted, his green eyes bright behind small round glasses Strange had gotten him when they discovered his vision wasn't perfect. And I'll say it tomorrow too. Strange created a small butterfly of golden energy, letting it flutter around Harry's head. Magic isn't just about doing. It's about understanding. Harry's small face scrunched in concentration. He raised his hands, mimicking Strange's gestures. A flicker of energy sparked between his fingers, not the refined energy of the mystic arts, but something wilder, more instinctual. Good, Strange encouraged. Feel the energy, don't force it. The spark grew, wobbling into a rough butterfly shape that held for 3 seconds before dissipating. Harry beamed. I did it. You did. Strange ruffled his perpetually messy hair. Your magic is different from ours, but you're learning to channel it our way. That's very impressive. When can I get a wand like my parents had? Harry asked, as he often did. When you're older, Strange answered, as he always did. For now, learning to control your magic without tools is more important. Strange had been honest with Harry about his origins from the beginning. He knew his parents' names, how they died protecting him, and that he was famous in another magical community. Strange had even taken him to Godric's Hollow once, invisibly, to see their graves. But he'd been careful to shield Harry from the darker aspects, the Horcrux, the prophecy, the expectations that would be placed on him. The Ancient One appeared at the edge of the training yard, watching them with her enigmatic smile. Harry, she called. Would you like to help Master Wong organize the new shipment of texts from Nepal? Harry jumped up excitedly. At 5, he couldn't read most of the ancient tomes, but Wong had turned text cataloging into a game that Harry adored. As Harry ran off, the Ancient One approached Strange. His magical signature grows stronger, she observed. Both traditions blending in interesting ways. Strange nodded. The wizarding magic wants a focus, a wand. It keeps building up pressure because he's not releasing it their way. Yet he channels it through our methods regardless. She looked thoughtfully in the direction Harry had gone. We should consider letting him explore both traditions as he grows. Keeping him entirely from his wizarding heritage may create complications. I've considered it, Strange admitted. But their community thinks he's with his mother's sister. The moment I take him into Wizarding London, someone will recognize him. He gestured to his forehead. That scar makes him instantly identifiable to them. There are ways around such things, the Ancient One said mysteriously. Think on it, Stephen. Balance in all things. By age 7, Harry had grown into an unusual child, confident beyond his years in some ways, endearingly childlike in others. His magical education continued at Camartage, but Strange had also begun carefully introducing him to aspects of the wizarding world. They'd visited Diagon Alley twice under glamour spells, Harry wide-eyed at the community he partly belonged to. Harry sat in Strange's study at the New York sanctum, legs swinging beneath his chair as he practiced simple levitation. Unlike the masters who needed specific gestures, Harry could sometimes make objects float with just intense concentration, his wizarding magic manifesting alongside what he'd learned of the mystic arts. "Stephen," he said, carefully floating a pencil in circles, "when can I try my parents' magic properly? With a wand and everything?" Strange looked up from the ancient text he was studying. Harry had long since started calling him Stephen rather than any parental title, which suited them both. Their relationship was more mentor and protege than father and son, though the affection between them was obvious to anyone watching. "You'll attend Hogwarts when you turn 11, Strange answered. "We've discussed this. But that's forever away," Harry sighed dramatically. "And you're teaching me all your magic now. Why wait for theirs?" Strange set his book aside, giving Harry his full attention. "Because timing matters. The wizarding world believes you're safely hidden away. The moment you officially enter their world, things will change for you." Harry nodded seriously. They'd had variations of this conversation before. "Because of Voldemort?" "Yes. And because they've built you up as a symbol." Strange leaned forward. "I want you fully grounded in who you actually are before you have to deal with who they think you are." Harry's pencil dropped as his concentration broke. "But who am I, exactly? Not quite a sorcerer, not quite a wizard." Strange smiled. "You're Harry Potter. Master of 2 magics. And you get to decide what that means." The sanctum's warning system suddenly flared to life, magical barriers rippling with alert energy. Strange was on his feet instantly. "Stay here," he instructed Harry, his casual demeanor vanishing as the cloak of levitation swept onto his shoulders. "But I can help," Harry protested, jumping up. "Not this time." Strange's tone left no room for argument. "If I'm not back in 5 minutes, use your sling ring to go directly to Wong at Camartage." "Understood." Harry nodded reluctantly, knowing better than to argue when the sanctum was under threat. Strange strode from the room, sealing it with protective spells behind him. In the main hall of the sanctum, 3 figures had somehow breached the outer defenses. They wore dark robes, different from the masters of Camartage, heavier, more elaborate, with hoods shadowing their faces. Each held a wand. Wizards. Dark ones, judging by the malevolent energy they exuded. "This isn't a tourist attraction," Strange said coldly, hands already moving in defensive patterns. "How did you find this place?" The tallest figure stepped forward. "We followed the magical signature. Unique. Powerful." His accent was Eastern European, his English precise. "The Dark Lord's essence calls to those who know how to listen." Strange's expression remained impassive, but internally, he cursed. They weren't looking for the sanctum, they were tracking Harry, sensing the contained Horcrux. "There's nothing for you here," Strange said. "Leave, or I'll make you leave." The wizard laughed. "You're not one of us. Different magic. Limited." He raised his wand. "Where is the Potter boy? Our master's followers would reward us greatly." "You really don't want to test my limitations," Strange warned, orange energy sparking between his fingers. The wizard fired first, a jet of green light that Strange recognized as the killing curse. He opened a small portal that redirected it into a wall, which cracked with the impact. What followed was a clash of magical traditions. The wizards fired spells, blasting curses, cutting hexes, immobilizing jinxes, while Strange defended with the mystic arts, creating shields, portals, and dimensional weapons. The wizards were powerful but unfamiliar with his abilities, giving Strange an edge despite being outnumbered. He trapped one wizard in a mirror dimension with a swift gesture, removed another's wand hand through a portal, along with the wand it held, and cornered the leader with bands of eldritch energy. "Impossible," the bound wizard spat, struggling against his magical restraints. "No wandless magic is this powerful." "Not wandless," Strange corrected, tightening the bands. Different. Who sent you? Before the wizard could answer, the study door burst open. Harry stood there, eyes wide, having clearly disobeyed the instruction to stay put. I felt them, he said, staring at the captured wizards. They're like the dark spot in my head. The bound wizard's eyes widened at the sight of Harry, specifically, at his lightning scar. The boy who lived, he whispered. It's true then. He lives. Strange moved protectively in front of Harry, but not before the wizard locked eyes with the boy. Strange saw the attempt, legitimacy, trying to push into Harry's mind. But the mental disciplines Harry had been taught activated instinctively, forcefully ejecting the intrusion. The wizard screamed as his own probe was reversed, his mind briefly exposed to Harry's unique magical signature, wizarding power reinforced by training in the mystic arts. Blood trickled from his nose as he slumped in his bonds. Stephen. Harry's voice trembled slightly. It's okay, Strange assured him, though his expression was grim. But we need to move. Now. Wong, he called into a small portal he opened beside him. We have a situation. Prepare for our arrival. Within minutes, Strange had secured the captive wizards with both mystical and conventional restraints and ushered Harry through a portal to Camartage. The Ancient One was waiting, her expression grave. Dark wizards, Strange explained tersely. Tracking the Horcrux signature. The Ancient One nodded. I feared this might happen as his power grew. Both magical signatures are strengthening, the Horcrux included. They know he's alive now, Strange said. And not with his relatives. Harry looked between them, unusually pale but composed. What does this mean? The Ancient One smiled gently at him. It means, young Harry, that your introduction to the wizarding world might need to happen sooner than we planned. 3 years later, an owl swooped through an open window at Camartage, causing several apprentices to duck in surprise. The bird made straight for the library where Harry sat with Wong, studying dimensional theory while practicing simple transfigurations, turning matches into needles and back. The owl dropped a thick envelope directly onto Harry's book and perched on a nearby shelf, looking remarkably pleased with itself. Finally, Harry grinned, recognizing the wax seal immediately from Strange's descriptions. He tore open the envelope, reading aloud, Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry Headmaster, Albus Dumbledore, Order of Merlin, First Class, Grand Source, CHF. Warlock, Supreme Mugwump, International Confeed, of Wizards, Dear Mr. Potter, we are pleased to inform you that you have been accepted at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Please find enclosed a list of all necessary books and equipment. Term begins on September 1st. We await your owl by no later than July 31st. Yours sincerely, Minerva McGonagall Deputy Headmistress. Harry looked up at Wong, excitement and nerves warring in his expression. It came. Just like Stephen said it would. Wong nodded, eyeing the owl with mild suspicion. The tracking charm on that envelope is quite powerful. I'm impressed it found you through our dimensional barriers. Magic always finds a way, Harry quoted, something both Stephen and the Ancient One had told him often. Where is he? I need to show him. Master Strange is dealing with a situation in the dark dimension, Wong reminded him. He'll return tomorrow. Harry nodded, trying not to show his disappointment. At almost 11, he understood Strange's responsibilities as Sorcerer Supreme better than he had as a child. Still, this moment felt too important to face without the man who had raised him. The owl's waiting for a reply, Wong pointed out pragmatically. Should I provide some parchment? Harry grinned. Yes, please. And could you ask Master Hammer if I could borrow some proper ink? I want to do this right. As Wong left to fulfill these requests, Harry reread the letter, fingers tracing the embossed seal. After years of preparation, study, and training, he was finally about to enter the world of his birth parents. The world that still thought of him as their savior. The world where a piece of his parents' murderer still sought to return. Harry touched his scar reflexively, the thin lightning bolt barely visible now beneath his unruly bangs. Thanks to Strange and the Ancient One, the Horcrux remained sealed away, unable to influence his thoughts or draw on his power. But it was still there, a constant reminder of what awaited him in the wizarding world. The letter was still clutched in his hand when a familiar shower of orange sparks appeared in the library, forming a portal through which Stephen Strange stepped, looking weary but satisfied. "Stephen!" Harry jumped up. "You're back early." Strange smiled, the exhaustion in his face giving way to genuine warmth. Dormammu was surprisingly reasonable this time. His eyes fell on the letter. "Ah! It arrived." Harry nodded excitedly. "Just like you said it would." Addressed exactly to Harry Potter, the Eastern Apprentice Quarters, Kamartaj, Nepal. "Magical addressing quills," Strange said, taking the letter when Harry held it out. "Very precise magic. Similar to our location spells but more specialized." He read through it quickly, then looked at Harry with uncharacteristic solemnity. "So. The moment of truth. Are you ready for this?" Harry straightened his shoulders, summoning the calm center his years of meditation had built. "I've been training for this my whole life." Strange placed a hand on Harry's shoulder. "Yes, but training and doing are different things. Once you enter their world officially, everything changes. The wizarding world has expectations of Harry Potter that have nothing to do with who you actually are." "I know," Harry said. "The boy who lived. Their savior from Voldemort." Strange nodded. "A heavy burden for anyone, let alone an 11-year-old. But you have advantages most wizarding children don't. You understand both magical traditions. You've been trained to center yourself, to recognize external influences on your mind. And I have you," Harry added with a small smile. Something softened in Strange's expression. "Yes. You have me. And Wong, though he'd never admit how attached he is to you. And the Ancient One." He squeezed Harry's shoulder. "Whatever happens at Hogwarts, you're not alone. Remember that." Wong returned with parchment, ink, and a quill, eyeing the reunion with approval. "I see the Dark Dimension released you earlier than expected." "It sensed I had a more important appointment," Strange said lightly, then turned back to Harry. "So. What shall we tell Hogwarts?" Harry took the writing materials from Wong and sat at the library table, dipping the quill with practiced ease, another skill Strange had ensured he learned. "Dear Professor McGonagall," he wrote in careful script, "I am pleased to accept my place at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. However, I should inform you that I will not be arriving via the traditional channels as I have been living outside Britain. My guardian, Dr. Stephen Strange, will escort me to school on September 1st. Thank you for your consideration. Yours sincerely, Harry Potter." He looked up at Strange. "Direct enough?" Strange read it over and nodded. "Perfect. Just enough information to let them know you're coming, not enough to reveal where you've been or how you've been raised." He smiled slightly. "Though I expect Dumbledore to figure it out rather quickly." "Will that be a problem?" Harry asked, sealing the letter. "Not a problem," Strange said thoughtfully. "But definitely, interesting." He watched as Harry attached the letter to the waiting owl's leg. "The Ancient One has crossed paths with Albus Dumbledore before. She respects him, which is rare for her." The owl took off, winging its way back through the window and into the clear Nepali sky. Harry watched it go, a mixture of excitement and apprehension swirling inside him. "I should get a wand," he said suddenly, turning to Strange. "And all the other supplies. When can we go to Diagon Alley?" Strange exchanged a look with Wong. "Soon. But this time, no glamours or disguises. It's time for Harry Potter to officially return to the wizarding world." "And the dark wizards?" Harry asked, more soberly. "The ones looking for me?" "Let them look," Strange said, his eyes hardening slightly. Anyone who tries to harm you will learn why the Sorcerer Supreme isn't someone to cross. His expression softened again. Besides, your dual magical training gives you advantages they won't expect. Just remember, magic is about understanding, not just doing, Harry finished with a grin. You've only told me that about 1,000 times. Strange smiled. Make it 1,001, then. Now, I believe a certain future Hogwarts student has dimensional studies to complete before dinner. Harry groaned but returned to his books, his Hogwarts letter propped up beside them, a tangible reminder that his life was about to change dramatically. Again. As Harry bent over his studies, Strange watched him with an unreadable expression. The boy who had unexpectedly become his responsibility 10 years ago had grown into someone extraordinary, powerful, yes, but also thoughtful and kind. Strange wondered, not for the first time, what James and Lily Potter would think of how their son had been raised. Strange hoped they would approve. Because ready or not, Harry Potter was about to step into the legacy they had left him, albeit with a few mystical additions they could never have imagined. Chapter 2, Worlds Collide. The Ancient One poured tea with the same careful precision she applied to all tasks, magical or mundane. Across from her, Stephen Strange watched steam rise from the delicate cups, his mind clearly elsewhere. You're worried about the Hogwarts letter, she observed, setting down the teapot. Not worried. Preparing. Strange took a sip. Dumbledore will have questions. Many, she agreed with a small smile. Though perhaps fewer than you think. Albus has always been perceptive. Strange raised an eyebrow. You speak as though you know him well. We've crossed paths throughout the decades. Different magical traditions, similar burdens. Her eyes twinkled. He was quite handsome in his youth. Strange nearly choked on his tea. That's an image I didn't need. Before the Ancient One could respond, one of the apprentices appeared at the doorway, looking flustered. Masters, forgive the interruption. There's a visitor. At the main gate. The young woman hesitated. He's not like our usual visitors. The Ancient One set down her cup. Tall, auburn-bearded, half-moon spectacles. The apprentice blinked in surprise. Yes, master. And wearing the most extraordinary purple robes with stars and moons, the Ancient One finished. Please show Albus Dumbledore to the courtyard. Tell him I'll join him shortly. After the apprentice departed, Strange stood. That was faster than expected. Albus never wastes time when his curiosity is piqued, the Ancient One said, rising gracefully. And Harry Potter's whereabouts have been his most pressing mystery for a decade. Should I get Harry? She shook her head. Let us speak with him first. This conversation will be delicate. In the central courtyard of Camartage, Albus Dumbledore stood examining the ancient architecture with obvious appreciation. Despite his outlandish robes, midnight purple emblazoned with animated silver constellations, he somehow looked perfectly at home amid the Eastern mysticism of the sanctuary. Albus, the Ancient One, greeted him, gliding into the courtyard with Strange a step behind. It's been some time. Dumbledore turned, his blue eyes twinkling behind his spectacles. Nearly 30 years, I believe. You look exactly the same, my dear. His gaze shifted to Strange. Though I don't believe I've had the pleasure. Dr. Stephen Strange, Strange extended his hand. Master of the New York Sanctum. Dumbledore shook it firmly. Albus Dumbledore. I must confess, Doctor, when young Harry's acceptance letter returned with your name attached, I was most intrigued. I imagine you were, Strange said dryly. Please, sit. They settled at a stone table beneath a flowering tree, an apprentice silently bringing more tea before disappearing. I've long respected the work of the masters of the mystic arts, Dumbledore said, accepting a cup. Though our magical traditions rarely intersect. Yet here we are, the Ancient One noted. Intersecting rather dramatically through one boy. Dumbledore's expression grew more serious. Indeed. I confess I've spent 10 years wondering what became of Harry Potter. Our tracking charms failed completely after that Halloween night. He looked directly at Strange. Until I received his response yesterday, I believed him safely residing with his aunt and uncle in Surrey. Safely? Strange couldn't keep the edge from his voice. You left an infant on a doorstep in November. With protective spells and a warming charm, Dumbledore corrected mildly. And for good reason. His mother's sacrifice created a powerful protection through blood magic. Living with her sister would have maintained those protections. While subjecting him to a childhood of neglect and fear, Strange countered. I've seen Petunia Dursley's views on magic. Harry would have been miserable. Dumbledore's eyes narrowed slightly. You've been watching them? Of course. I needed to understand what alternative you'd arranged before deciding to keep Harry with me. The Ancient One raised a hand slightly, tempering the growing tension. What's done is done, Albus. Harry has been raised here, among the masters and apprentices of Camartage. He has learned our ways while also studying the foundations of wizarding magic. A most unusual upbringing, Dumbledore mused. But my concern remains the same. When Voldemort's followers discovered Harry missing from his relatives, they tortured the Dursleys quite severely trying to extract information. His voice grew heavier. Protection works both ways, you see. Without Harry there, they had none. Strange's expression darkened. The Dursleys are alive. Yes, though they required significant medical intervention and memory modification. They now believe their nephew attends a school abroad on a permanent scholarship. Strange absorbed this. I regret their suffering, but not my decision. Harry needed specialized care that they couldn't provide. Because of the Horcrux, Dumbledore said quietly. The atmosphere in the courtyard shifted instantly. Strange's hands moved slightly, ready to cast if needed, while the Ancient One remained perfectly still. You know, she said simply. Dumbledore nodded. Not immediately. But I've had 10 years to study what happened that night. Voldemort's body was destroyed, yet a piece of his soul remained tethered to this plane. His gaze was piercing now. Attached to Harry Potter. And what would you have done about it? Strange asked. If Harry had stayed with the Dursleys. Monitored it. Studied it. Prepared him, when the time was right. Dumbledore spread his hands. I cannot pretend to know what you have done instead. The Ancient One spoke. We've contained it. Isolated the fragment from Harry's consciousness and magical core using dimensional barriers. Dumbledore leaned forward, genuine interest sparking. Fascinating. Our methods would not allow for such precision. The fragment would either remain fully connected or be destroyed entirely, likely taking the host with it. Exactly why he stayed with us, Strange said, relaxing slightly. Harry knows about the Horcrux. He understands what it is, but it can't influence him or draw power from him. Most impressive, Dumbledore acknowledged. And his wizarding education? We've covered theory and basic practical skills that don't require a wand, Strange explained. History, potion ingredients, magical creatures. He's been to wizarding communities worldwide, anonymously, of course. And now he wishes to attend Hogwarts, Dumbledore said thoughtfully. I must ask, why now? Why not continue his unique education here? Because Harry deserves to know both sides of his heritage, Strange said simply. His parents were wizards. Their world is half of who he is. Dumbledore studied Strange for a long moment. You've raised him well, by all appearances. I admit I had my doubts when I realized where Harry had been all these years, but perhaps. He stroked his beard. Perhaps this unplanned path was fortuitous after all. Does that mean you'll accept him at Hogwarts? Strange asked directly. With the understanding that his education has been non-traditional. My dear doctor, Dumbledore smiled. Hogwarts has accepted students with far stranger backgrounds than young Harry's. Though I would request the opportunity to meet him before I depart. The Ancient One nodded to an apprentice who had been waiting discreetly at the edge of the courtyard. Minutes later, Harry appeared, walking with the confident grace of someone who'd spent years training in martial disciplines alongside magical ones. Harry, Strange gestured him forward. This is Professor Albus Dumbledore, headmaster of Hogwarts. Harry approached and bowed slightly in the traditional Camartage greeting. Professor. It's an honor to meet you. Dumbledore rose, his eyes taking in every detail of the boy before him, from his lightning scar to his composed demeanor to the small sling ring partially visible in his pocket. Harry Potter, Dumbledore said softly. You have your mother's eyes. Something flickered across Harry's face, a brief, powerful emotion quickly mastered. You knew my parents well, sir. I did indeed. They were exceptional students and even finer people. Dumbledore smiled gently. I look forward to telling you more about them when you arrive at Hogwarts. If that is still your wish. Harry nodded firmly. It is, Professor. I want to learn everything I can about wizarding magic. About where I come from. An admirable goal. Though I wonder. Dumbledore gestured to Harry's hands, which bore the slight calluses of someone who practiced complex mystical gestures daily. Will you find our wand waving a step backward from what you've already learned? Harry smiled. Different, not backward. Stephen, Dr. Strange, always says understanding comes from studying multiple perspectives. Wise advice, Dumbledore conceded with a nod to Strange. Well then, I shall expect you on September 1st with the other first years. Though perhaps. He glanced at Strange. Given your unique situation, we should arrange a private meeting before the start of term. There are certain aspects of Hogwarts that might be surprising to someone with your background. A reasonable suggestion, Strange agreed. We'll contact you to arrange it. After finalizing plans for Harry's arrival and a few more pleasantries, Dumbledore prepared to leave. The Ancient One accompanied him to the gates while Strange remained with Harry in the courtyard. Well? Strange asked once they were alone. What do you think of the great Albus Dumbledore? Harry considered. He's complicated. Powerful, but hiding it. Kind, but calculating. He looked up at Strange. He was scanning me with magic the whole time. Trying to understand what you've taught me. Strange smiled proudly. And you noticed without me pointing it out. Good. He placed a hand on Harry's shoulder. Dumbledore will be both an ally and a challenge. He has his own plans for you, based on prophecies and his understanding of Voldemort. But our plans take priority, Harry said confidently. Strange's expression grew serious. No, Harry. Your plans take priority. Remember that. Dumbledore's visions, my expectations, ultimately, your path is yours to choose. Harry nodded, though uncertainty flickered briefly in his eyes. So. Diagon Alley next. Yes, Strange smiled. Time to officially introduce Harry Potter to the wizarding world. Diagon Alley buzzed with preterm excitement. Families pushed through the crowded street, arms laden with books, potion ingredients, and new robes. No one paid particular attention to the dark-haired boy in simple clothes who stepped through the brick archway behind the leaky cauldron, accompanied by a tall man in an impeccably tailored Muggle suit. Different from our previous visits, Harry murmured to Strange, taking in the sensory overload. Because we're not hiding this time, Strange replied quietly. Ready? Harry nodded, straightening his shoulders slightly. They had deliberately styled his hair to leave his forehead, an iconic scar, visible. It wouldn't take long for someone to notice. Their first stop was Gringotts. Strange had explained that while he had provided for Harry's needs, the Potter family vault remained untouched, waiting for him to claim it. The goblin at the counter peered suspiciously at Strange's letter of introduction from Dumbledore. And you claim to be Harry Potter, the goblin asked, leaning forward to examine Harry's face. "I am Harry Potter," Harry confirmed calmly. The goblin's eyes flickered to his forehead, widening slightly at the scar. "We've been expecting you for some time, Mr. Potter. Though not with this, guardian." He eyed Strange distrustfully. "Dar. Strange is my magical guardian, appointed by the Ancient One of Camartage," Harry stated with a formality that made Strange hide a smile. Harry had practiced goblin etiquette extensively. The goblin's demeanor changed instantly. "The Ancient One? That alters matters considerably." He hopped down from his high stool. "I am Grip Hook. I will take you to your family vault personally." The cart ride through Gringotts underground tunnels was exhilarating. Harry couldn't help but grin as they rocketed along the tracks, wind whipping his already messy hair into further disarray. "You're enjoying this too much," Strange muttered, looking slightly queasy as they took a particularly sharp turn. When the cart finally stopped before a large, ancient-looking door, Griphook stepped out. "Key, please." Strange produced a small golden key that Dumbledore had provided. The goblin inserted it into the door, which melted away to reveal mountains of gold, silver, and bronze coins. Harry stared. "This is all your parents' legacy," Strange confirmed. The Potter family was well established in Wizarding Britain. Harry stepped inside cautiously, overwhelmed. Beyond the coins were shelves of artifacts, books, and family heirlooms. Strange remained respectfully at the doorway, letting Harry explore this direct connection to his past alone. After filling a pouch with galleons, sickles, and nuts, Harry rejoined Strange, clutching something small in his other hand. When Strange raised an eyebrow questioningly, Harry opened his palm to reveal a small, moving photograph of a young couple holding a baby, James and Lily Potter with infant Harry, laughing and waving at the camera. "I found it in a box of personal items," Harry said quietly. Strange nodded, understanding the significance. "A good reminder of why we're here." Back in Diagon Alley, they methodically worked through Harry's school list: robes at Madame Malkin's, books at Flourish and Blot's, potion supplies at the apothecary. Throughout their shopping, Harry noticed the gradual spread of whispers and pointing as people recognized him. "Is that Harry Potter? Where has he been all these years? Who's that man with him? Not a wizard, look at his clothes." Harry maintained the composed demeanor his Camartage training had instilled, politely acknowledging greetings but not engaging with the growing excitement his presence was causing. "You're handling the attention well," Strange commented as they exited the magical menagerie with supplies but no pet. They'd agreed an animal might not adapt well to dimensional travel between Hogwarts and Camartage. "Meditation helps," Harry replied wryly. "Though I didn't expect quite so many people to recognize me instantly." "You're their legend. The boy who lived." Strange's tone made clear what he thought of the title. "One last stop. The most important one." Ollivander's was a narrow, dusty shop with a single wand on display in the window. As they entered, Harry felt the magical energy of the place wash over him. Thousands of wands, each with its own unique resonance, creating a symphony of potential that his mystic training allowed him to perceive. "Good afternoon," said a soft voice. An old man with wide, pale eyes stepped from the shadows, studying Harry intently. "I wondered when I'd be seeing you, Mr. Potter." His gaze shifted to Strange. "Though I did not expect such unusual company." "Mr. Ollivander," Strange greeted him. "Harry needs a wand." "Yes, yes indeed." Ollivander's attention returned to Harry, lingering on his scar. "I remember every wand I've ever sold, Mr. Potter. Your mother's was 10¼ inches long, swishy, made of willow. Excellent for charm work. Your father, on the other hand, favored a mahogany wand. 11 inches. Pliable. Powerful and excellent for transfiguration." Harry absorbed this information hungrily, another piece of his parents' legacy. "Well now, Mr. Potter. Let me see." Ollivander pulled out a tape measure that began measuring Harry on its own while he pulled wands from shelves. Every Ollivander wand has a core of a powerful magical substance. We use unicorn hairs, phoenix tail feathers, and the heartstrings of dragons. No two Ollivander wands are the same, just as no two wizards are the same. He handed Harry a wand. Beechwood and dragon heartstring. 9 inches. Nice and flexible. Just take it and give it a wave. Harry took the wand, immediately sensing its magical signature, strong but discordant with his own energy. He waved it anyway, causing several boxes to fly off shelves. No, no, definitely not, Ollivander snatched it back, already offering another. Maple and phoenix feather. 7 inches. Quite whippy. This continued for nearly 20 minutes. Harry tried wand after wand, each producing increasingly chaotic results. Strange watched with growing concern as the pile of rejected wands grew and Ollivander became more excited rather than discouraged. Tricky customer, eh? Not to worry, the perfect match is here somewhere. Ollivander paused, a strange look crossing his face. I wonder. He disappeared into the back of his shop, returning with a dusty box. An unusual combination. Holly and phoenix feather, 11 inches, nice and supple. The moment Harry's fingers closed around this wand, he felt it, a surge of warmth, a resonance that harmonized perfectly with both his natural wizarding magic and the mystical energies he'd trained to harness. Gold and red sparks shot from the wand's tip, dancing around him in a display more controlled and intricate than any previous attempt. Ollivander clapped his hands. Oh, bravo! Yes, indeed, very good. His expression turned curious. Curious, curious. What's curious? Harry asked, still feeling the wand's perfect attunement to him. I remember every wand I've ever sold, Mr. Potter. Every single wand. It so happens that the phoenix whose tail feather is in your wand gave another feather, just one other. It is very curious indeed that you should be destined for this wand when its brother gave you that scar. Harry's eyes met Strange's across the shop. Yes, 13.5 inches. You. Powerful wand, very powerful, and in the wrong hands. Well, if I had known what that wand was going out into the world to do. Ollivander shook his head. As they paid 7 gold galleons for the wand, Ollivander studied Harry with renewed interest. Your magic has an unusual quality, Mr. Potter. Structured differently than most wizards I meet. His pale eyes flickered to Strange. Almost as if it's been supplemented. Thank you for your assistance, Mr. Ollivander, Strange said firmly, placing a hand on Harry's shoulder. We should be going. Outside, Harry examined his wand with newfound appreciation. Connected to Voldemort, he murmured. That can't be coincidence. Few things are, when it comes to you, Strange agreed. The Horcrux likely influenced the connection, but the wand chose you for who you are, not just the fragment you carry. Their shopping complete, they slipped into a quiet alley where Strange opened a portal back to Camartage. As the golden sparks circled, several passing witches gasped in shock at the display of unfamiliar magic. Harry grinned at Strange. So much for keeping a low profile. They would have talked anyway, Strange shrugged. Might as well give them something interesting to discuss. Platform 9 3/4 bustled with activity on the morning of September 1st, families bid tearful goodbyes, students reconnected with friends, and owls hooted indignantly from their cages. Through this chaos, Harry pushed his trolley, Strange walking beside him looking somewhat out of place in his impeccable suit among the robed wizards. Remember, Strange was saying, maintain your meditation practice every morning. It will help you balance both magical traditions without burnout. I know, Harry nodded, having heard these instructions multiple times. And if you need me, use the communication mirror, not the sling ring unless it's a genuine emergency. Harry recited, then smiled. I'll be fine, Stephen. Strange stopped, looking down at Harry with an uncharacteristically vulnerable expression. "This is harder than I expected," he admitted quietly. Harry understood. For 10 years, they'd rarely been separated for more than a few days. "I'll miss you too." Strange cleared his throat, composing himself. "Yes, well. Learning independence is important." He glanced around at the platform. "I've spoken with Dumbledore. You're to meet him in his office before the sorting ceremony." Suddenly, a large family of redheads pushed past, the mother herding 4 boys and a young girl while shouting about Muggles and Platform 9 3/4 in a voice loud enough to break the statute of secrecy single-handedly. Harry and Strange exchanged amused glances. "That's my cue," Harry said. "I should board if I want to find a compartment." Strange nodded. "Right after the sorting." "And Harry," he hesitated. "Whatever house you end up in, it doesn't define you." "I know." Harry grinned. "Though Wong has 20 galleons betting on Ravenclaw. The Ancient One put 50 on Gryffindor," Strange countered with a smile. "I'm staying neutral." "Wise choice." Harry straightened, then did something he rarely did, he stepped forward and hugged Strange briefly. "Thank you. For everything." Strange looked momentarily stunned, then recovered, awkwardly patting Harry's back. "Go on, then. Show them what a Camartage education looks like." Harry boarded the train, found an empty compartment, and waved from the window as the Hogwarts Express pulled away from the station. Strange remained on the platform until the train disappeared around a bend, his tall figure standing out among the departing families. The compartment door slid open, revealing the youngest red-headed boy from the large family. "Anyone sitting there?" he asked, pointing to the seat opposite Harry. "Everywhere else is full." "Go ahead," Harry invited. The boy sat down, glancing at Harry then quickly away, before looking back with widening eyes. "Holy cricket," he breathed. "You're Harry Potter." Harry nodded, having expected this reaction. "And you are?" "Ron. Ron Weasley." The boy seemed torn between awe and curiosity. "Is it true? Do you really have the scar?" "Yes." Harry pushed back his hair briefly. "Wicked," Ron breathed. "And is it true you disappeared after you know who tried to kill you? Nobody knew where you were?" Harry had prepared for these questions. "I've been living abroad, studying magic differently." "With that tall bloke on the platform? Didn't look like a wizard." "Looks can be deceiving," Harry said mildly, then changed the subject. "Is your whole family magical?" This successfully diverted Ron into talking about his large wizarding family. Harry listened with genuine interest, asking questions that revealed how different his upbringing had been from a typical wizarding child's. Their conversation was interrupted when the compartment door opened again, revealing a girl with bushy brown hair and rather large front teeth. "Has anyone seen a toad?" "A boy named Neville's lost one," she announced in a bossy voice. "No toads here," Ron replied. The girl's eyes landed on Harry, widening slightly at his scar, but instead of commenting on it, she said, "You're Harry Potter. I've read all about you in modern magical history and the rise and fall of the dark arts." "You shouldn't believe everything you read," Harry said with a small smile. "Those books were written by people who never actually spoke to me." The girl looked momentarily taken aback by this challenge to literary authority. "Well, I'm Hermione Granger." "And you are?" she asked Ron. "Ron Weasley," he mumbled through a mouthful of chocolate frog. "Pleasure," she said, not sounding entirely sincere. "You two better change into robes. I expect we'll be arriving soon." After she left, Ron rolled his eyes. "Whatever house I'm in, I hope she's not in it." The remainder of the journey passed with Ron explaining Quidditch, Harry sharing carefully edited stories of his travels with Strange, and the two boys demolishing a small mountain of sweets from the trolley. By the time the train pulled into Hogsmeade Station, they had established the beginnings of friendship. Following Hagrid's booming instructions, the first years crossed the lake in small boats, Hogwarts castle looming magnificently before them. Harry felt a strange mixture of awe and analytical interest. The castle's magical construction reminded him of certain dimensional nexus points he'd studied with the Ancient One. In the entrance hall, Professor McGonagall greeted them with a stern speech about houses and behavior before leading them into a small chamber to wait for the sorting. "Potter," she said before leaving, "the headmaster wishes to see you before the ceremony. Follow me, please." Whispers erupted among the first years as Harry followed McGonagall through a series of corridors and up several moving staircases. She stopped before a stone gargoyle. "Sherbet lemon," she announced, causing the gargoyle to leap aside, revealing a spiral staircase. "The headmaster awaits you. Return to the Great Hall when you're finished, the sorting will begin shortly." Harry climbed the moving staircase, arriving at a polished oak door with a griffin knocker. Before he could knock, a voice called, "Enter, Harry." Dumbledore's office was circular and filled with fascinating silver instruments that whirred and emitted small puffs of smoke. Portraits of previous headmasters and headmistresses dozed in their frames, while a magnificent red and gold bird perched near the desk. "Ah, Harry." Dumbledore rose from behind his desk. "Welcome to Hogwarts at last. I trust your journey was pleasant." "Yes, Professor," Harry replied, his attention caught by the phoenix. "Is that Fawkes?" "I've read about him." Dumbledore's eyebrows rose slightly. "Indeed it is. Few first years would recognize a phoenix on sight. We studied magical creatures at Camartage," Harry explained. "Though seeing one in person is different." "Indeed." Dumbledore gestured to a chair. "Please, sit. We don't have much time before the sorting, but there are a few matters we should discuss." Harry sat, maintaining the straight-backed posture that years of meditation had ingrained. "Firstly," Dumbledore began, "your unique background presents certain considerations. While students are aware of your legend, they don't know where you've been these past 10 years. I suggest discretion regarding your training in the mystic arts." Dr. Strange suggested the same, Harry acknowledged. "I don't plan to advertise it. Wise. Those secrets have a way of revealing themselves at Hogwarts." Dumbledore's eyes twinkled. "Secondly, while you are here, I hope you will remember that Hogwarts operates under different magical principles than Camartage. Our rules exist for student safety." Harry recognized the gentle warning. "I understand, Professor. I'm here to learn wizarding magic properly, not to challenge your methods." "Excellent." Dumbledore stroked his beard thoughtfully. "And finally, I wonder if you might permit me to examine the containment spell on your scar." "Purely academic interest, I assure you." Harry hesitated, remembering Strange's cautions about Dumbledore's curiosity. "I'm sorry, Professor, but Dr. Strange and the Ancient One were very specific about not tampering with the seal. Even examination might destabilize it." Disappointment flashed briefly across Dumbledore's face before his genial smile returned. "Quite understandable. Perhaps another time, when we know each other better." He stood. "We should return to the Great Hall. Your fellow first years await." The sorting ceremony was already underway when Harry slipped in through a side door. He joined the remaining unsorted first years just as Perks, Sally Ann, was called forward. "Potter, Harry," McGonagall called moments later. The hall fell silent, then erupted in whispers as Harry walked to the stool. "Potter, did she say? The Harry Potter? Where's he been all this time?" The last thing Harry saw before the sorting hat dropped over his eyes was the entire hall craning to get a better look at him. Said a small voice in his ear. "Difficult. Very difficult. Plenty of courage, I see. Not a bad mind either. There's talent, oh my goodness, yes, and what's this? Training in the mystic arts. How fascinating." Harry gripped the edges of the stool, focusing on his mental shields as the hat rummaged through his mind. "You've learned occlumency already?" Impressive for one so young. And such ambition to master both magical traditions. You could be great, you know, and Slytherin would help you on the way to greatness, no doubt about that. Not Slytherin, Harry thought firmly. Not Slytherin, eh? Are you sure? You could do well there, with your cunning and determination. No. Well, if you're sure, better be Gryffindor. The last word was shouted to the entire hall. Harry removed the hat and walked to the Gryffindor table amid the loudest cheers yet. Percy Weasley shook his hand vigorously, while the Weasley twins shouted, "We got Potter! We got Potter!" Later, after the feast and Dumbledore's odd warning about the third-floor corridor, Harry followed Percy up to Gryffindor Tower. The common room with its squashy armchairs and crackling fire felt surprisingly homelike. In the first-year boys' dormitory, Harry found his trunk already placed beside a four-poster bed hung with deep red, velvet curtains. As his dorm mates, Ron, Neville Longbottom, Seamus Finnegan, and Dean Thomas, chatted excitedly, Harry discreetly set up a small meditation space beside his bed and placed the communication mirror Strange had given him on his nightstand. "What's that?" Ron asked, noticing the mirror. "Just a way to talk with my guardian," Harry explained. "Like wizard photos, but interactive." "Cool," Ron said appreciatively. "My dad would love that. He's obsessed with magical objects." As the other boys fell asleep, Harry sat cross-legged on his bed, closing his eyes for a brief meditation to center himself after the eventful day. Despite the excitement and novelty, he felt a strange sense of rightness being at Hogwarts, as if part of him recognized this as where he belonged. He'd have to write to Strange in the morning to report his sorting. The Ancient One would be pleased to win her bet. Classes began the following day, and Harry quickly discovered both advantages and challenges his unique education created. In Transfiguration, Professor McGonagall was impressed when Harry turned his match into a needle on his first attempt, his experience with manipulating matter through the mystic arts giving him an intuitive understanding of transformation. "Well done, Mr. Potter," she said, examining his perfect needle. "It seems the rumors of your prodigious talents weren't exaggerated." Charms presented similar success. Professor Flitwick squeaked excitedly when Harry mastered the levitation charm immediately, the feather rising steadily under his precise control. "Extraordinary control, Mr. Potter. Most first-years struggle with maintaining consistent height." Potions, however, proved more challenging. Professor Snape swept into the classroom, his dark eyes lingering on Harry with unmistakable dislike. "Ah, yes," he said softly during roll call. "Harry Potter. Our new celebrity." Throughout the lesson, Snape targeted Harry with increasingly difficult questions about potions' ingredients and preparations. Thanks to his studies at Camartage, Harry could answer most of them, which seemed to irritate Snape further. "Fame clearly isn't everything," Snape sneered after Harry correctly described the differences between monkshood and wolfsbane. "No, sir," Harry agreed calmly. "Study and preparation matter more." Snape's eyes narrowed at the subtle challenge. "We shall see, Potter. We shall see." Defense against the dark arts proved disappointing. Professor Quirrell stuttered through basic concepts, his classroom reeking of garlic. Yet something about him made Harry uneasy, a dissonance between the professor's nervous demeanor and the occasional sharp, calculating look in his eyes. More troubling, Harry's scar prickled uncomfortably whenever Quirrell turned his back. The sensation wasn't pain exactly, but more like the magical equivalent of feedback, the Horcrux fragment responding to something nearby. After class, Harry lingered in an empty classroom, closing his eyes to check the dimensional barriers Strange and the Ancient One had placed around the Horcrux. They remained intact, but something was agitating the fragment. That evening, Harry used the communication mirror to contact Strange. "Gryffindor." Strange's face appeared in the glass. "The Ancient One will be insufferable about winning that bet." "Tell her it was a close call," Harry smiled. The hat considered Slytherin too. Strange's expression grew more serious. "How are the barriers holding?" Harry explained the strange reaction to Quirrell. Strange frowned. Maintain distance from him when possible. If the sensation worsens, let me know immediately. Could he be connected to Voldemort somehow? Harry asked. Possibly. The Horcrux would recognize magical signatures similar to its creator. Strange looked thoughtful. What else have you noticed at Hogwarts? Harry described his classes, his emerging friendship with Ron, and his observations about the castle's magical structure. The ambient magic here is different from Camartage, he explained. More settled. Like it's sunk into the stones themselves over centuries. That's an astute observation, Strange noted with approval. Keep your journal updated with these insights. They'll be valuable for understanding how the magical traditions differ fundamentally. They spoke for a few more minutes before Harry heard Ron returning to the dormitory. After saying goodbye, he tucked the mirror away. Who were you talking to? Ron asked, flopping onto his bed. My guardian, Harry said. Just checking in. Ron nodded, accepting this. Hey, did you hear Malfoy challenging you to a duel? Midnight in the trophy room. Harry raised an eyebrow. No. When did he do that? At dinner. You'd already left. Ron looked eager. I said I'd be your second. We have to go, you can't let him think you're scared. Harry considered this. It sounds like a trap. Why would he challenge me publicly instead of directly? Ron's enthusiasm dimmed slightly. Well. I guess Filch might be waiting instead of Malfoy. Exactly. Harry smiled. Let's not walk into an obvious setup. Ron looked disappointed but nodded. You're probably right. Fred and George got caught in a similar trick last year. As the days passed, Harry settled into Hogwarts routine while maintaining his mystical practices in private. Each morning before his dormmates woke, he meditated for 30 minutes, balancing his magical energies and checking the Horcrux containment. Hermione Granger, the bossy girl from the train, proved to be brilliantly intelligent but socially awkward. Harry noticed how other students avoided her know-it-all attitude, while she seemed increasingly desperate for acceptance. It reminded him of his early days at Camartage, before he'd learned that knowledge without wisdom often alienated others. One afternoon after Charms class, where Hermione had correctly performed the levitation charm and then rather tactlessly tried to correct Ron's pronunciation, Harry overheard Ron's bitter comment, "It's no wonder no one can stand her. She's a nightmare, honestly." Hermione pushed past them, tears in her eyes. "I think she heard you," Harry said quietly. So? Ron looked uncomfortable but defensive. She must have noticed she's got no friends. Harry thought about Strange's frequent reminders about compassion being as important as magical skill. That doesn't mean we should make her feel worse about it. When Hermione didn't appear for the next class or at the Halloween feast that evening, Harry grew concerned. He overheard Parvati Patil telling her friend Lavender that Hermione was crying in the girls' bathroom and wanted to be left alone. The Halloween feast was interrupted when Professor Quirrell burst into the hall, terror on his face. "Troll, in the dungeons, thought you ought to know." He then sank to the floor in a dead faint. As chaos erupted and prefects began leading students back to their houses, Harry grabbed Ron's arm. "Hermione. She doesn't know about the troll." Ron bit his lip, looking conflicted. "Oh, all right," he sighed. "But Percy better not see us." They slipped away from the Gryffindors, hurrying toward the girls' bathroom. As they rounded a corner, they heard heavy footsteps, too heavy for a student or teacher. Ducking behind a stone griffin, they watched in horror as a 12-foot troll lumbered down the corridor, dragging a massive wooden club. "The bathroom," Harry whispered as the troll disappeared through a doorway. "It's going into the—" A high, petrified scream confirmed their fears. "Hermione," they said together, running toward the bathroom. Inside, Hermione Granger was shrinking against the wall opposite, looking as if she was about to faint. The troll advanced on her, knocking sinks off the walls as it went. "Confuse it," Harry said desperately to Ron, grabbing a tap and throwing it against the wall. The troll stopped, turning its ugly head toward the noise. It hesitated, then made for Harry instead, lifting its club. "Oi, pea-brain," yelled Ron, throwing a metal pipe at the troll's head. It didn't seem to notice the pipe hitting its shoulder, but it heard the yell and paused again, turning toward Ron instead. Harry seized the momentary distraction. While Ron kept the creature's attention, Harry made a quick decision. In the split second before the troll turned back to him, he traced a familiar pattern in the air, not the wand movement for a wizard spell, but the mystical gesture for a simple binding charm. Golden energy sparked from his fingertips, invisible to Ron and Hermione from their positions, but effective enough to momentarily tangle the troll's feet. It stumbled, off balance just as it swung its club, causing the massive weapon to crash into a stall rather than Ron. Harry pulled out his wand, knowing he needed to use wizarding magic now that the others were watching. "Wingardium Leviosa," he shouted, using the levitation charm they'd learned in Flitwick's class. The club flew suddenly out of the troll's hand, rose high into the air, turned slowly over, and dropped, with a sickening crack, onto its owner's head. The troll swayed on the spot and then fell flat on its face with a thud that made the whole room tremble. Hermione was the first to speak. "Is it dead?" "I don't think so," said Harry. "Just knocked out." A sudden slamming and loud footsteps made the three of them look up. Professor McGonagall burst into the room, followed by Snape and Quirrell. Quirrell took one look at the troll, let out a faint whimper, and sat quickly down on a toilet, clutching his heart. Snape bent over the troll, examining it with a suspicious glance toward Harry. McGonagall was looking at Harry and Ron with fury in her eyes. "What on earth were you thinking?" she demanded, cold with fury. "You're lucky you weren't killed. Why aren't you in your dormitory?" Then a small voice came from the shadows. "Please, Professor McGonagall, they were looking for me." "Miss Granger." Hermione had managed to get to her feet. "I went looking for the troll because I thought I could deal with it on my own, you know, because I've read all about them." Harry stared at her, amazed that Hermione Granger was actually telling a lie to a teacher. "If they hadn't found me, I'd be dead now." Harry levitated its club and knocked it out. "They didn't have time to come and fetch anyone. It was about to finish me off when they arrived." "Well, in that case," said Professor McGonagall, staring at the three of them. "Miss Granger, you foolish girl, how could you think of tackling a mountain troll on your own?" After McGonagall deducted 5 points from Hermione and awarded 5 each to Harry and Ron, they were sent back to Gryffindor Tower. The common room was packed and noisy, everyone eating the food that had been sent up. Hermione, however, stood alone by the door, waiting for them. There was an embarrassed pause before all three of them said, "Thanks," and hurried off to get plates. But from that moment on, Hermione Granger became their friend. There are some things you can't share without ending up liking each other, and knocking out a 12-foot mountain troll is one of them. As November began, the weather turned very cold. Harry noticed Snape limping badly during the first Quidditch match of the season, Gryffindor vs. Slytherin. More concerningly, Harry's broom suddenly began trying to buck him off mid-match, jerking violently as if possessed. While Ron and Hermione believed Snape was jinxing the broom, Harry's mystical senses picked up a different magical signature, one that resonated uncomfortably with his scar. He managed to regain control by channeling a stabilizing energy through the broom, a technique Strange had taught him for handling enchanted objects. After catching the snitch, in his mouth, accidentally, and securing a Gryffindor victory, Harry joined Ron and Hermione for tea at Hagrid's hut, where the conversation turned to recent strange events. "It wasn't Snape," Hagrid insisted when Hermione voiced her suspicions. "Why would he try to kill Harry?" "I found out he tried to get past that three-headed dog on Halloween," said Hermione. "It bit him. We think he was trying to steal whatever it's guarding." Hagrid dropped the teapot. "How do you know about Fluffy?" "Fluffy? Ron echoed incredulously. Yeah, he's mine. Bought him off a Greek chappie I met in the pub last year. I lent him to Dumbledore to guard the, yes, said Harry eagerly. Now, don't ask me any more, said Hagrid gruffly. That's top secret, that is. Forget that dog and forget what it's guardin'. That's between Professor Dumbledore and Nicholas Flamel, aha, said Harry. So there's someone called Nicholas Flamel involved, is there? Hagrid looked furious with himself. Later, in the library, Harry, Ron, and Hermione began researching Nicholas Flamel. While Ron and Hermione checked various magical texts, Harry discreetly used knowledge from his Camartage education. I think I know who he is, Harry whispered to them after ensuring no one could overhear. Nicholas Flamel is an alchemist who created the Philosopher's Stone. Ron looked blank, but Hermione gasped. Of course. The stone that can transform any metal into gold and produces the elixir of life, making the drinker immortal. She looked at Harry curiously. How did you know that? Harry shrugged. I studied alchemy a bit before coming to Hogwarts. Blimey, what kind of school did you go to? Ron asked, impressed. Not a conventional one, Harry replied carefully. But if that's what Fluffy's guarding, it explains why someone would want to steal it. As Christmas approached, Harry decided to stay at Hogwarts rather than return to Camartage. Strange had been called away to deal with a dimensional incursion in another reality, and Harry wanted to use the relatively empty castle to explore certain magical aspects of Hogwarts he'd been curious about. On Christmas morning, Harry woke to find presents at the foot of his bed, including an unexpected gift labeled simply, "Your father left this in my possession before he died. It is time it was returned to you. Use it well." Inside was a silvery, fluid-like cloak that Ron immediately identified as an invisibility cloak, an extremely rare magical artifact. They're really rare, Ron said, awestruck. If that's what I think it is. Try it on. Harry threw the cloak around his shoulders, and Ron gasped. It is. Look down. Harry looked down at his feet, but they were gone. He dashed to the mirror and saw only his head suspended in midair, his body completely invisible. That night, Harry used the cloak to explore the castle, eventually discovering a magnificent mirror in an unused classroom. Looking into it, he saw not only his own reflection, but his parents standing beside him, and behind them, a crowd of other people with his eyes, his nose, his knees. The Potter family. Harry returned to the mirror the following night, mesmerized by the vision of his family, only to find Dumbledore waiting for him. Back again, Harry, the headmaster said gently. I didn't see you, sir. Strange how nearsighted being invisible can make you, Dumbledore smiled. So, you, like hundreds before you, have discovered the delights of the Mirror of Erist. I didn't know it was called that, sir. But I expect you've realized what it does. It shows us what we want, whatever we want. Harry ventured. Yes and no, said Dumbledore quietly. It shows us nothing more or less than the deepest, most desperate desire of our hearts. You, who have never known your family, see them standing around you. Harry nodded, understanding the mirror's dangerous allure. The mirror will be moved to a new home tomorrow, Harry, and I ask you not to go looking for it again, Dumbledore continued. It does not do to dwell on dreams and forget to live. Before Harry left, he gathered his courage to ask a question. Sir, Professor Dumbledore. Can I ask you something? Obviously, you've just done so, Dumbledore smiled. You may ask me one more thing, however. What do you see when you look in the mirror? I see myself holding a pair of thick, woolen socks. When Harry looked surprised, Dumbledore explained, one can never have enough socks. Another Christmas has come and gone and I didn't get a single pair. People will insist on giving me books. Harry left, sensing that Dumbledore hadn't been entirely truthful, just as Harry himself hadn't shared that besides his parents, he'd seen Strange standing slightly apart from the Potter family, watching over them all with his characteristic mix of arrogance and protectiveness. As winter melted into spring, Harry, Ron, and Hermione grew increasingly concerned about the Philosopher's Stone. Their suspicions about someone trying to steal it intensified after they discovered that Hagrid had acquired a dragon egg from a mysterious stranger who had questioned him about Fluffy. "I told him, Fluffy's a piece o' cake if you know how to calm him down," Hagrid admitted. "Just play him a bit o' music and he falls straight asleep." He looked horrified. "I shouldn't ha' told ya that." After helping arrange for Charlie Weasley's friends to collect the newly hatched Norwegian Ridgeback, which Hagrid had named Norbert, Harry, Ron, and Hermione were caught out after curfew. Their punishment was to help Hagrid in the Forbidden Forest, tracking a wounded unicorn. While searching with Draco Malfoy and Hagrid's dog Fong, Harry encountered a hooded figure drinking unicorn blood. His scar exploded with pain, far worse than the discomfort he'd felt around Quirrell. The Horcrux fragment seemed to resonate powerfully with whatever lurked beneath that hood. As the figure approached him, Harry fought through the pain to reinforce the dimensional barriers around the Horcrux, using the techniques the Ancient One had taught him. A centaur named Firenze arrived just as the figure retreated, explaining grimly, "Only one who has nothing to lose, and everything to gain, would commit such a crime. The blood of a unicorn will keep you alive, even if you are an inch from death, but at a terrible price. You have slain something pure and defenseless to save yourself, and you will have but a half-life, a cursed life, from the moment the blood touches your lips." "Voldemort," Harry whispered, understanding immediately. Firenze looked at him curiously. "You are wiser than most your age, Harry Potter." "Yes, it is he who drinks unicorn blood in the forest, waiting for his chance to steal the stone and return fully to life." Back at the castle, Harry used the communication mirror to contact Strange, explaining the encounter and his growing certainty that Quirrell, not Snape, was helping Voldemort. "The stuttering is an act," Harry explained. "And my scar reacts whenever he's nearby. Tonight in the forest, when I saw the figure drinking unicorn blood, the Horcrux nearly broke through the barriers." Strange's expression was grave. "The Horcrux recognizes its maker. If Voldemort is possessing Quirrell, the fragment in your scar would respond to his presence." "What should I do?" Harry asked. "If he's after the stone, tell Dumbledore your suspicions," Strange advised. "But be careful how much you reveal about how you know. And Harry," his voice grew more serious, "if the situation becomes dangerous, use your sling ring. Don't try to face Voldemort alone." Harry promised, though he wondered if it would come to that. It did, sooner than expected. The following night, after exams had finished, Harry, Ron, and Hermione discovered that Dumbledore had been called away to London on urgent ministry business, clearly a diversion. "He's going to try and get the stone tonight," Harry said with certainty. Despite Hermione's protests about breaking more rules, the three friends decided they had to protect the stone themselves. That night, they slipped past Fluffy using a flute to lull him to sleep, then faced a series of obstacles clearly designed by different professors. They navigated a deadly plant, Devil's Snare, caught a flying key, won a violent life-size chess game, where Ron was injured, and solved a logic puzzle involving potions. At the final barrier, only enough potion remained for one person to go forward. "You're the best wizard in our year, Harry," Hermione said after working out which potion would allow safe passage through the magical flames. "You go on, I'll take Ron back and send an owl to Dumbledore." Harry drank the potion and stepped through the black flames, not into Snape's sneering face as Ron had predicted, but finding Professor Quirrell examining the mirror of Erist. "You," gasped Harry. Quirrell turned, smiling without a stutter. "Yes, me. I wondered whether I'd be meeting you here, Potter. But I thought, Snape, Severus." Quirrell laughed. "Yes, he does seem the type, doesn't he? Next to him, who would suspect P.P. Poor, St. stuttering P. Professor Quirrell?" Quirrell snapped his fingers, and ropes sprang out of thin air, wrapping themselves tightly around Harry. "You're too nosy to live, Potter. Scurrying around the school on Halloween like that, you nearly saw me coming to look at what was guarding the stone. You let the troll in?" "Certainly. I have a special gift with trolls. Unfortunately, while everyone else was running around looking for it, Snape, who already suspected me, went straight to the third floor to head me off, and not only did my troll fail to beat you to death, that three-headed dog didn't even manage to bite Snape's leg off properly. Quirrell turned back to the mirror. I see the stone. I'm presenting it to my master, but how do I get it? A high, cold voice spoke, seemingly from Quirrell himself. Use the boy. Use the boy. Quirrell rounded on Harry. Yes, Potter, come here. He clapped his hands once, and the ropes binding Harry fell off. Harry considered using his sling ring but hesitated, revealing that ability might expose his connection to strange and the mystic arts. Look in the mirror and tell me what you see, Quirrell commanded. Harry stepped in front of the mirror of Eriste, using the mental disciplines he'd learned at Camartage to keep his thoughts guarded. In the mirror, he saw his reflection smile at him, put its hand into its pocket, and pull out a blood-red stone. His reflection winked and put the stone back in its pocket, and as it did so, Harry felt something heavy drop into his real pocket. Well, said Quirrell impatiently. What do you see? Harry improvised quickly. I see myself shaking hands with Dumbledore. I've won the House Cup for Gryffindor. Quirrell cursed and pushed him aside, but the high voice spoke again. He lies. He lies. Potter, come back here. Quirrell shouted. Tell me the truth. What did you see? The high voice spoke again. Let me speak to him, face to face. Master, you are not strong enough. I have strength enough, for this. Quirrell reached up and began unwrapping his turban. Harry felt his scar burning, the Horcrux fragment straining against its dimensional barriers. As Quirrell turned, Harry saw a terrible face protruding from the back of his head, chalk white with glaring red eyes and slits for nostrils, like a snake. Harry Potter. It whispered. See what I have become. Mere shadow and vapor. I have form only when I can share another's body, but there have always been those willing to let me into their hearts and minds. Unicorn blood has strengthened me, these past weeks, and once I have the elixir of life, I will be able to create a body of my own. Harry backed away, reinforcing his mental shields as he felt Voldemort's consciousness pressing against his mind. Stop him, shrieked Voldemort, and Quirrell lunged, grabbing Harry by the wrist. At once, a needle-sharp pain seared across Harry's scar, but simultaneously, Quirrell howled in agony. His hand blistered where it touched Harry's skin. Master, I cannot hold him, my hands, my hands. Quirrell released Harry, staring at his own blistering palms in disbelief. Then kill him, fool, and be done, screeched Voldemort. Quirrell raised his hand for a deadly curse, and Harry reacted instinctively. Using both magical traditions simultaneously, he thrust his hands forward, one performing a mystical gesture of banishment while the other gripped his wand tightly. Golden energy sparked at his fingertips as he shouted, Protego, combining the wizard's shield charm with a dimensional barrier. The result was unexpected, the shield not only blocked Quirrell's curse but rebounded it with enhanced force, throwing the possessed professor across the chamber. Before Quirrell could recover, Harry lunged forward, pressing his hands to Quirrell's face. The contact was excruciating for both of them. Harry felt as though his scar might split open, while Quirrell screamed in agony as his face blistered and burned beneath Harry's touch. Through the pain, Harry understood, his mother's sacrificial protection, combined with the mystical energy he channeled, was anathema to Voldemort's corrupted spirit. Kill him! Kill him! Voldemort shrieked as Quirrell's body began to crumble beneath Harry's hands. The chamber filled with blinding light as a portal suddenly opened beside them. Through it stepped Strange, his cloak of levitation billowing dramatically. Harry, he shouted, taking in the scene instantly. Let go, you're killing yourself too. But Harry couldn't release his grip, Quirrell's disintegrating body seemed fused to his hands by the magical backlash. Strange moved with practiced efficiency, his hands weaving complex patterns that separated the combatants. As Quirrell collapsed, Voldemort's spirit tore free with a bone-chilling scream, passing through Harry like icy wind before fleeing the chamber. The sudden release of contact sent Harry sprawling backward, the stone tumbling from his pocket. The stone, Harry gasped, struggling to remain conscious. Protect. It's safe, Strange assured him, kneeling beside Harry and checking his vital signs with both mundane and mystical methods. You've pushed yourself too far. How did you know? Harry managed as darkness began to cloud his vision. The communication mirror shattered, a failsafe I built in. Strange's voice seemed to come from very far away. Rest now, Harry. You've done enough. The last thing Harry saw before losing consciousness was Strange creating another portal, this one directly to the hospital wing, and Dumbledore rushing through it, his face grave with concern. Harry woke in the hospital wing 3 days later to find Dumbledore sitting beside his bed. Good afternoon, Harry, said Dumbledore, smiling. Harry's memories flooded back. Sir. The stone. Quirrell. Voldemort, calm yourself, my dear boy. Quirrell does not have the stone. Professor Strange arrived most fortuitously, though his methods of transportation caused quite a stir among the staff. Dumbledore's eyes twinkled momentarily. As for Voldemort, he has fled, once again cheated of his prize. Harry nodded, processing this. Where is Dr. Strange now? He returned to New York after ensuring you were stable. Most insistent fellow. Dumbledore adjusted his spectacles. Though he did leave me with several pointed recommendations regarding school security that I found rather humbling. Harry couldn't help but smile at that. Strange's arrogance when it came to magical defenses was legendary at Camartage. Now, Dumbledore continued more seriously, I believe we need to discuss your rather unusual magical abilities, Harry. Professor Quirrell's remains showed evidence of both wizarding and another form of magic. Harry hesitated, unsure how much to reveal. Fear not, Dumbledore assured him. Your guardian has approved a certain level of disclosure, given the circumstances. I must say, training in both magical traditions simultaneously is unprecedented. Most impressive. Thank you, sir, Harry said cautiously. I wonder if you might demonstrate something. Just between us. Dumbledore looked genuinely curious rather than suspicious. After a moment's consideration, Harry nodded. He reached for the small sling ring he kept hidden beneath his hospital gown and slipped it onto his fingers. With careful movements, he created a tiny portal, just large enough to reach through, that opened to the bedside table on the other side of the room. Through it, he retrieved a chocolate frog that Ron had left as a get-well gift. Dumbledore watched, fascinated. Remarkable. True spatial manipulation without apparition mechanics. He stroked his beard thoughtfully. I see now why Stephen was so confident in your abilities. Harry closed the portal. He taught me to respect both magical traditions, sir. I'm not trying to circumvent wizarding rules. I understand that now, Dumbledore nodded. Though I would request discretion regarding these abilities among the general student body. Not everyone would understand. Ron and Hermione don't know yet, Harry admitted. I wasn't sure how to tell them. True friends accept us as we are, Harry. But timing such revelations requires wisdom. Dumbledore stood. Now, I believe your friends have been quite anxious to see you. Shall I send them in? After Dumbledore left, Ron and Hermione burst into the hospital wing, full of questions about what had happened after they'd separated. Harry gave them an edited version of events, leaving out Strange's dramatic entrance and his own use of mystical energy. He'd tell them the full truth eventually, but as Dumbledore suggested, timing mattered. So the stone's destroyed? Ron said finally. Flammel will die. That's what Dumbledore said, but he doesn't think it's such a tragedy. To the well-organized mind, death is but the next great adventure. I always said he was off his rocker, said Ron, looking impressed at how crazy his hero was. The end-of-year feast arrived with Slytherin in the lead for the House Cup. However, Dumbledore awarded last-minute points to Gryffindor for the trio's adventures, 50 points each to Ron and Hermione, and 60 to Harry, tying them with Slytherin. Then, to everyone's surprise, he awarded 10 points to Neville for standing up to his friends, pushing Gryffindor into first place. As the Hogwarts Express carried them back to London, Harry reflected on his extraordinary first year. He'd come to Hogwarts to learn wizarding magic but had ended up teaching himself how to balance two magical traditions in crisis. On platform 9 3/4, he bid goodbye to Ron and Hermione with promises to write over the summer. As the Weasleys welcomed Ron home and Hermione reunited with her parents, Harry spotted a familiar figure waiting near the barrier, tall, goateed, and looking distinctly out of place in an impeccable Muggle suit. "Good year?" Strange asked as Harry approached. "Educational," Harry replied with a grin. Strange snorted. "That's one word for it. Ready to go home?" Harry nodded, realizing that home now encompassed both Camartage and Hogwarts, his two magical heritages merging into something unique, just like his abilities. With a casual gesture hidden from Muggle eyes, Strange opened a portal to the New York sanctum. As they stepped through, leaving the mundane world behind, Harry knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, whether from Voldemort's eventual return or from mastering his dual magical nature, he was uniquely equipped to face them. After all, he was Harry Potter, the boy who lived, and the only wizard ever trained in the mystic arts. Chapter 3, The Master of Two Arts. Summer in New York meant sweltering heat, crowded streets, and, for Harry Potter, intensive training in the ancient, air-conditioned sanctum on Bleecker Street. 2 months away from Hogwarts. 2 months to push his mystical abilities without hiding them from classmates. Again, Strange instructed, circling Harry as golden mandalas shimmered around the boy's hands. This time, maintain the shield while casting. Harry gritted his teeth, sweat beading on his forehead. The mystical shield hummed with energy as he raised his wand with his other hand. Wingardium Leviosa. The book on the pedestal rose shakily, wobbling as Harry struggled to channel both magical traditions simultaneously. For 10 seconds, he maintained both spells, then the shield collapsed, and the book dropped with a thud. "Better," Strange nodded. "Your control is improving, but the magical signatures still conflict at their peaks." Harry wiped his brow, frustrated. "It shouldn't be this hard. They're both magic." "Different foundations," Strange reminded him, summoning a glass of water and handing it to Harry. "Wizarding magic relies on directed intent through a focus. The mystic arts manipulate dimensional energy directly. They weren't designed to work together." Harry gulped the water gratefully. "Yet here I am, stuck with both." "Not stuck," Strange corrected sharply. "Gifted. How many others can claim mastery of two magical traditions at 12? "Mastery's a stretch," Harry mumbled, but he straightened his shoulders. "Let's try again." Before they could resume, Wong burst into the training room, his typically stoic expression disturbed. "Stephen. We've detected something." Strange's demeanor shifted instantly. "Where?" "Scotland. Near Hogwarts." Wong glanced at Harry. "A magical awakening with dimensional implications. Ancient. Powerful." Harry's blood ran cold. "What kind of awakening?" Wong hesitated. "It reads like a living entity emerging from extended magical stasis. And there's a second signature, familiar." "Show me," Strange ordered, following Wong to the sanctum's scrying chamber. The circular room housed an array of mystical instruments, many of Strange's own design that combined modern technology with ancient sorcery. At the center, a three-dimensional map of ley lines glowed softly, showing magical energy currents across Earth's surface. Wong gestured, and the map zoomed into Scotland, then to Hogwarts. The castle appeared in miniature, pulsing with magical energy, but beneath it, something else stirred, a darker current awakening from dormancy. "That's inside Hogwarts," Harry said, stepping closer. Under the foundations. Yes, Strange murmured, adjusting controls on a nearby instrument. And it's responding to this second signature. The map shifted, highlighting a small, intense point of magical energy several hundred miles away. Strange magnified it, revealing what appeared to be a book. A book? Harry asked, confused. What kind of book causes something to wake up under Hogwarts? Strange and Wong exchanged significant looks. A magical artifact, Strange said carefully. Likely containing a consciousness or partial consciousness. Harry's eyes widened. Like my scar. Another Horcrux. Possibly. Strange's expression darkened. Which means we're detecting Voldemort's influence again, but through a different vessel. I need to warn Dumbledore, Harry said immediately. Strange raised a hand. Not yet. If this is what I suspect, we need more information before alerting the wizarding authorities. Their approach to such threats tends to be reactive. What do you suggest? Wong asked. Harry returns to Hogwarts as planned, but with enhanced protective measures. Strange turned to Harry. We'll accelerate your training in sensory expansion and dimensional barriers. If something dangerous has awakened beneath Hogwarts, you'll need to detect it without exposing yourself. Harry nodded, determination replacing his earlier frustration. What about the book? I'll track it, Strange decided. Wong, prepare the long-distance viewing portal. I want eyes on that artifact without direct intervention. As Wong left to make preparations, Strange placed a hand on Harry's shoulder. This complicates your second year considerably. Story of my life, Harry replied with a wry smile. At least this time we have some warning. The warning proved valuable sooner than expected. Harry's journey to platform 9 3/4 was blocked, literally. The barrier between platforms 9 and 10 refused to let him pass, remaining solid when he attempted to walk through. Someone's tampered with the dimensional gateway, Strange observed, running his hand along the apparently ordinary brick wall. Golden energy sparkled at his fingertips. Specifically targeted to block you. Harry glanced nervously at the station clock. The train leaves in 5 minutes. What do we do? Strange smiled slightly. We use a different dimensional gateway. With a casual gesture, he opened a portal directly onto platform 9 3/4, where the Scarlet Hogwarts Express waited, billowing steam. Several nearby wizarding families gasped at the display of unfamiliar magic. Show off, Harry muttered, but he was grinning as he pushed his trolley through. Strange followed, ignoring the stares. I'll investigate who blocked your access. It may connect to what we detected. Master Strange. Professor McGonagall's voice cut through the platform noise. She approached briskly, looking distinctly displeased. While we appreciate your prompt delivery of Mr. Potter, I must remind you that Muggle transportation methods exist for good reason. Strange raised an eyebrow. Someone magically sealed the official entrance against Harry specifically. I chose not to leave my ward stranded in Muggle London. McGonagall's stern expression faltered. Sealed. That's concerning. I'll inform the headmaster immediately. She glanced at the portal, which Strange still maintained casually with one hand. Though perhaps with less theatrical methods in the future. I'll consider it, Strange said, in a tone that suggested he absolutely would not. After McGonagall departed, Strange turned to Harry. Remember our protocols. Daily meditation to monitor the entity beneath the school. Weekly check-ins through the mirror. If you sense immediate danger, sling ring to the sanctum, I know, Harry finished. He hesitated, then impulsively hugged Strange. Thanks for the dramatic entrance. Ron will be jealous he missed it. Strange looked momentarily flustered before awkwardly patting Harry's back. Go on, then. And Harry, his expression grew serious, be careful. Whatever's awakening down there is ancient and dangerous. Harry nodded and boarded the train, finding a compartment with Hermione, who immediately bombarded him with questions about his summer. Ron arrived moments later, breathless and frustrated. "The barrier sealed itself," he exclaimed. "Mom and Ginny are still stuck on the other side. Dad's contacting the ministry." His eyes widened as Harry described Strange's solution. "Blimey, Harry. Your guardian just opened a hole in space. Right in front of everyone." "He's not big on subtle," Harry said with a shrug, carefully gauging his friend's reactions. Hermione looked thoughtful rather than shocked. "I've been wondering about your guardian ever since he arrived through that portal in the hospital wing last year. He's not using wizarding magic, is he?" Harry took a deep breath. He'd decided over the summer to be more open with his friends about his dual magical nature. "No, he's not. Dr. Strange practices the mystic arts, a different magical tradition entirely." "Wicked," Ron breathed. "Can you do that too? The portal thing?" "Some of it," Harry admitted. "I've been trained in both traditions since I was little." Hermione's eyes gleamed with curiosity. "That explains so much. How you picked up spells so quickly, how you knew things most first years wouldn't." She leaned forward eagerly. "Can you show us something?" Harry hesitated, then nodded. After checking that their compartment door was closed, he slipped on his sling ring and made a small circular motion. A tiny portal opened above his palm, revealing the view from atop the moving train. "Bloody hell," Ron whispered, staring through the miniature portal at the countryside rushing past from a different perspective. "It's dimensional manipulation," Harry explained, closing the portal. "The mystic arts focus on energy manipulation, accessing different planes of existence." "Is it difficult to learn both types of magic?" Hermione asked, already analyzing the implications. "Very," Harry confirmed. "They use completely different magical frameworks. Sometimes they conflict with each other." "Is that why you meditate every morning?" Ron asked unexpectedly. Harry blinked in surprise. "You noticed that?" "Well, yeah. You sit by the window for ages before breakfast. I thought you were just weird about mornings." Harry laughed. "It helps balance the different magical energies. Otherwise, they can interfere with each other." "That's fascinating," Hermione said earnestly. "Are there books about this other magic?" "Not many that would make sense to wizards," Harry said. "The foundations are completely different." Their conversation continued throughout the journey, Harry answering their questions while carefully avoiding sensitive topics like the Horcrux in his scar or the entity they detected beneath Hogwarts. By the time they reached Hogsmeade Station, Ron and Hermione had accepted this new aspect of Harry's identity with surprising ease. "Friends who accept you as you are," Harry thought, remembering Dumbledore's words. Maybe the headmaster had been right about that. The first sign of trouble came during the welcome feast when nearly headless Nick mentioned hearing something moving within the walls. Harry extended his mystical senses briefly, detecting a faint magical signature slithering through the castle, ancient, cold, and hungry. That night, after his roommates fell asleep, Harry sat cross-legged on his bed, deepening his meditation beyond his usual morning practice. He projected his awareness downward, through the castle's foundations, seeking the source of what they detected in New York. Deep beneath Hogwarts, past the dungeons, past even the foundations, he sensed a vast, hidden chamber and within it, something massive stirring from centuries of slumber. The creature's consciousness brushed against his mystical probe, causing Harry to withdraw quickly before it could detect him. He opened his eyes, heart racing. The legends were true. The Chamber of Secrets existed, and Salazar Slytherin's monster was waking up. Over the following weeks, Harry maintained vigilant monitoring while attempting to have a normal school experience. Quidditch practice, classes, homework, all continued against the backdrop of his secret awareness that something deadly lurked below. The situation escalated when writing appeared on a corridor wall: "The Chamber of Secrets has been opened. Enemies of the air, beware." Beneath the message hung Mrs. Norris, Filch's cat, stiff as a board but not dead, petrified. The discovery threw the school into panic and suspicion, especially when Professor Binns reluctantly shared the legend of Slytherin's chamber housing a monster meant to purge the school of those unworthy to study magic. It's targeting Muggleborns, Hermione concluded as they discussed the situation in an empty classroom. That's what Slytherin wanted, to remove students without pure wizarding blood. But what kind of monster can petrify someone? Ron wondered. Harry had a growing suspicion based on the serpentine movement he'd sensed, but before he could respond, he noticed something unusual on the window, spiders fleeing in an orderly line, squeezing through a tiny crack to escape outside. "That's weird," he commented, pointing. "Have you ever seen spiders act like that?" Ron shuddered, backing away. "I don't like spiders." "I need to research this," Hermione decided. There must be a connection between petrification and a creature that spiders fear. Later that night, Harry used the communication mirror to update Strange on the developments. "A basilisk," Strange said immediately when Harry described what he'd sensed. "The dimensional signatures match. King of Serpents, can kill with a direct gaze, massive lifespan." "But Mrs. Norris wasn't killed, just petrified," Harry pointed out. "Indirect gaze," Strange theorized. "Reflection, or through something. The killing power was diluted." Harry nodded slowly. "It's moving through the plumbing. That's how it's traveling unseen throughout the castle. The question is who's controlling it," Strange said, his expression grim. "Basilisks don't typically hunt selectively without direction. And it connects to that book we detected." "I'll keep searching," Harry promised. "Hermione's researching too, though she doesn't know exactly what we're looking for yet." Strange's image nodded in the mirror. "Be extremely careful, Harry. A basilisk's gaze is fatal even to practitioners of the mystic arts. Our dimensional barriers won't block it." "Understood," Harry said seriously. The danger became more personal when Colin Creevey, a first-year Gryffindor who had been enthusiastically photographing Harry, was found petrified. Dumbledore's grave expression as they brought Colin's rigid body to the hospital wing confirmed Harry's worst fears: the attacks had begun in earnest. Harry, Ron, and Hermione accelerated their investigation, now focusing specifically on serpentine monsters. Hermione nearly had a breakthrough when she rushed to the library after a transfiguration class, but when Harry and Ron went to find her hours later, she was nowhere to be found. "Hospital wing," came Neville's quiet voice as they searched the common room. "Hermione's been petrified." Harry felt as though the floor had dropped from beneath him. They raced to the hospital wing, finding Hermione lying rigid on a bed, one hand frozen in a clenched position. "She was found with this," Madame Pomfrey said softly, handing Harry a small mirror. "Near the library." Harry stared at the mirror, understanding immediately. "She figured it out," he whispered to Ron. "She realized it was a basilisk and used the mirror to look around corners." "A basilisk?" Ron repeated, his face pale. "Like, the giant snake that kills with its eyes?" Harry nodded grimly. "And I think I know how to find it." That night, after everyone had fallen asleep, Harry used the communication mirror again, this time with both Strange and Wong on the other end. "I need to find the entrance to the chamber," Harry explained. "Before anyone else gets hurt." "It's too dangerous," Strange argued. "Let Dumbledore handle this." "Dumbledore's been removed," Harry countered. "The governors forced him out after Hermione and another student were attacked. And I have abilities the other professors don't. I can sense the basilisk moving." Strange and Wong exchanged looks. "There might be a way," Wong said finally. "Astral projection would allow you to search without physically endangering yourself." "The basilisk couldn't harm your astral form," Strange agreed reluctantly. "But you've only practiced projection under our supervision. It's risky doing it alone." "I don't have a choice," Harry said firmly. "People are getting hurt. Hermione got hurt." After more discussion and strict protocols for the projection, Strange reluctantly agreed to the plan. That night, Harry sat cross-legged on his bed, curtains drawn and warded with silencing charms. He steadied his breathing, centered his consciousness, and performed the mystical gesture Strange had taught him. Harry's astral form separated from his physical body, which remained in deep meditation on the bed. Translucent and glowing slightly, his astral self passed effortlessly through the dormitory wall and began exploring Hogwarts from this new perspective. In astral form, the castle's magical nature was even more apparent, ley lines of power running through walls, enchantments glowing like constellations around doors and staircases. Harry descended through floors, following traces of the basilisk's distinctive magical signature. The trail led to a girl's bathroom on the second floor, specifically, to a particular sink that radiated ancient magic. Harry's astral form examined the tap, finding a tiny snake engraved on the copper. Parseltongue, he realized. The entrance requires Parseltongue to open. His exploration was cut short when he sensed his physical body beginning to destabilize. Maintaining astral projection was taxing for even experienced practitioners, let alone a 12-year-old still learning the technique. Harry quickly returned, reintegrating with his body and gasping as sensation rushed back. The next morning, Harry pulled Ron aside and explained what he'd discovered. Moaning Myrtle's bathroom? Ron exclaimed. The entrance has been there all this time. Makes sense, Harry said. Myrtle was killed 50 years ago, probably by the basilisk directly. And I bet the entrance needs Parseltongue to open. But you're not a Parselmouth, Ron pointed out. Harry hesitated. Actually, I might be. The night my parents died, when Voldemort's soul fragment attached to me. Dr. Strange thinks some of his abilities transferred too. Ron stared. Bloody hell, Harry. Is there anything normal about you? Harry grinned despite the situation. Apparently not. Their planning was interrupted by an announcement echoing through the corridors. All students returned to their house dormitories at once. All teachers to the staff room. Immediately, please. Hiding beneath Harry's invisibility cloak, they slipped into the staff room and overheard the terrible news. Ginny Weasley had been taken into the chamber itself, with a new message: her skeleton will lie in the chamber forever. Ron went white with shock. Harry made an instant decision. We're going after her, he whispered, pulling Ron from the room before the teachers could discover them. Now, before it's too late. They rushed to Moaning Myrtle's bathroom, where the ghost herself confirmed Harry's discovery about her death. Harry approached the sink, focusing on the small snake engraving. Drawing on the connection he'd always tried to suppress, he imagined the snake was real. Open, he commanded, but it came out as a strange hissing sound. The sink began to move, revealing a large pipe descending into darkness. I'm going down there, Harry told Ron firmly. You should alert a teacher, preferably McGonagall. Tell her what we've found. She's my sister, Ron said stubbornly. I'm coming with you. Ron, not negotiating, Harry. Harry recognized the determined set of Ron's jaw and nodded. Stay behind me. And if I tell you to close your eyes, do it instantly. Before descending, Harry activated the enchanted pendant Strange had given him, an emergency beacon that would alert the sorcerer to life-threatening danger. Then he performed a quick series of mystical gestures, creating a protective shield around both himself and Ron. What's that? Ron asked nervously. Mystical barrier, Harry explained. Won't stop the basilisk's gaze, but might help with physical attacks. They slid down the pipe into the darkness, landing in a tunnel lined with small animal bones. Following the passage cautiously, they discovered a massive snake skin at least 20 feet long. This thing's enormous, Ron whispered, horror in his voice. They pressed on, eventually reaching a solid wall carved with two entwined serpents. Harry repeated his Parseltongue command, and the snake separated as the wall cracked open. Instead of plunging directly into the chamber, Harry paused, gathering his magical focus. With a circular gesture, he created a small portal, just large enough to see through, that opened into the chamber itself. Through this viewing window, they could safely survey what awaited them. The Chamber of Secrets was a vast, dimly lit hall lined with towering stone pillars entwined with carved serpents. At the far end stood a monumental statue of Salazar Slytherin. And at its feet lay a small figure with flaming red hair, Ginny, motionless but not petrified. Beside her stood a tall, handsome boy of about 16, becoming more solid by the minute as he drew energy from Ginny's prone form. And in Ginny's hand was a small black diary, the magical artifact they detected from New York. "That's Tom Riddle," Harry whispered, recognizing the manifestation from his mystical senses. "Voldemort's younger self, preserved in the diary. He's draining Ginny's life force to restore himself." "How do you know that?" Ron asked, terrified for his sister but confused by Harry's certainty. "Same magical signature as the fragment in my scar," Harry explained tersely. "It's another piece of Voldemort's soul." Understanding the deadly nature of what awaited inside, Harry made a quick decision. He closed the viewing portal and turned to Ron. "I need you to return to the entrance and maintain contact with the outside world," he said firmly. "If I don't come back with Ginny in 15 minutes, get help, any way you can. I'm not leaving you both down here." Ron protested. "You have to," Harry insisted. "Someone needs to know what we found if we don't make it out. And I can handle myself better if I'm not worrying about protecting you too." Ron looked torn, but finally nodded. 15 minutes. Not a second longer. Once Ron reluctantly backtracked, Harry prepared himself. He centered his magical core, balancing the wizarding and mystical energies within him. Then, instead of entering through the serpent door, he created a full-sized portal directly into the chamber, stepping through behind Tom Riddle's position. Riddle was speaking to Ginny's unconscious form, his back to Harry, growing more solid by the minute. "Soon, Ginny Weasley. Soon I'll have enough of your life to return fully. Lord Voldemort will rise again, through you." "I don't think so, Tom," Harry called, causing Riddle to whirl around in surprise. "Potter." Riddle's handsome face contorted with hatred. "How did you?" "No matter. You're too late." Harry assessed the situation rapidly. Ginny was alive but fading. The diary lay beside her, pulsing with dark energy. And Riddle himself was nearly corporeal, though still slightly translucent. "Actually, I'm right on time," Harry replied, raising both his wand and his other hand in the mystical defensive position Strange had taught him. "Let her go." Riddle laughed coldly. "You don't give orders here, Potter. I've been waiting to meet you for so long. The famous boy who somehow defeated the greatest wizard who ever lived." "Voldemort wasn't the greatest wizard," Harry said, slowly circling to position himself between Riddle and Ginny. "Just the most destructive. Voldemort is my past, present, and future," Riddle snarled, using Ginny's wand to trace fiery letters in the air, "Tom Marvolo Riddle." With a wave, they rearranged to form, "I am Lord Voldemort." "I know who you are," Harry said calmly. "A fragment. A Horcrux, like the one you accidentally left in me." Riddle's confident expression faltered momentarily. "How could you possibly?" His eyes narrowed with sudden understanding. "Your guardian. The one who makes portals. He taught you things, didn't he? Things beyond ordinary wizardry." "You could say that," Harry agreed, continuing his careful approach. Riddle's face twisted with rage. "It doesn't matter what parlor tricks you've learned. I still have the advantage." He turned toward the statue of Slytherin, speaking in Parseltongue. "Speak to me, Slytherin, greatest of the Hogwarts Four." The statue's mouth began to open, revealing a dark tunnel from which Harry sensed movement. The basilisk was coming. Harry acted instantly. First, he cast a shield charm around Ginny's unconscious form. Then, with his other hand, he opened a small portal beneath the diary, causing it to fall through and reappear in his own hand. "No!" Riddle screamed, lunging forward too late. Harry backed away, the diary clutched tightly as he assessed his options. He couldn't destroy the Horcrux with ordinary means, and the basilisk was emerging, a massive serpent at least 50 feet long, with poisonous green scales. "Kill him!" Riddle commanded in Parseltongue. Harry closed his eyes as the basilisk fully emerged, relying on his mystical senses to track its movement. He could feel its enormous body slithering across the chamber floor, taste its ancient magic in the air. "You can't fight what you can't see, Potter," Riddle taunted. "The basilisk obeys only me." Harry didn't waste breath responding. Instead, he activated the emergency beacon Strange had given him, knowing the sorcerer would detect the signal across dimensions. Then, eyes still closed, he created a series of small portals around the chamber, confusing the basilisk as its own tail appeared in front of it, then its middle section to the right. The massive snake hissed in confusion, striking at the spatial anomalies Harry created. This bought Harry precious seconds to enact the next phase of his plan. Drawing on both magical traditions simultaneously, Harry pointed his wand at the chamber ceiling while using his other hand to create a specific mystical gesture. "Aguamenti Maxima," he shouted, combining the water conjuring spell with a dimensional tap into the lake above. Water exploded from the ceiling, cascading down in torrents and rapidly flooding the chamber floor. In the suddenly reflective surface, Harry could safely see the basilisk's reflection without meeting its deadly gaze directly. Riddle screamed in frustration as his control of the situation deteriorated. "It doesn't matter. The basilisk will still find you, and Ginny Weasley is almost gone." The enormous serpent recovered from its confusion, focusing on Harry's scent rather than sight. It surged forward through the rising water, jaws wide and fangs gleaming. Harry dove aside, using a small portal to cover extra distance. The basilisk crashed into a pillar, bringing chunks of stone raining down. As it recovered and prepared for another strike, Harry noticed something circling overhead: Fawkes, Dumbledore's phoenix, carrying the Sorting Hat. The phoenix swooped down, dropping the hat into Harry's hands before attacking the basilisk, pecking at its deadly eyes. The snake writhed and hissed in agony as Fawkes blinded it, eliminating its most lethal weapon. The bird may have blinded the basilisk, but it can still hear you, smell you. Riddle raged. "You cannot escape." Harry thrust his hand into the Sorting Hat, feeling something solid materialize within. He pulled out a gleaming silver sword with rubies embedded in the hilt, the Sword of Gryffindor. Now armed and facing a blinded basilisk, Harry had to balance multiple magical challenges simultaneously, keeping Ginny protected, preventing Riddle from interfering, dealing with the basilisk, and finding a way to destroy the diary Horcrux. The communication mirror in his pocket suddenly heated up. Harry pulled it out to find Strange's face visible in the glass. "Harry." The beacon, basilisk. Chamber of Secrets. Horcrux diary draining a student, Harry summarized rapidly, ducking as the serpent lunged blindly toward his voice. Strange's expression turned focused. "I can't portal directly there, the chamber has ancient wards. But I can help with the Horcrux. Place the mirror facing the diary." Harry did as instructed while continuing to evade the basilisk's attacks. Through the mirror, Strange began an incantation, golden energy visibly building around his hands even through the small glass. "Keep the connection stable for 30 seconds, Strange instructed. I'm creating a dimensional alignment that will make the Horcrux vulnerable to physical destruction. Hurry!" Harry shouted as the basilisk's massive head smashed into a nearby pillar, sending debris flying. Riddle, realizing what they were attempting, commanded the basilisk toward the sound of Harry's voice. "No. Kill him now." The basilisk surged forward just as Strange completed his incantation. Golden energy pulsed from the mirror onto the diary, causing it to glow with an unearthly light. "Now, Harry. Destroy it while the alignment holds," Strange called. In one fluid motion, Harry dodged the basilisk strike, rolled forward, and thrust the Sword of Gryffindor directly into the diary. Ink poured from the book like blood as Riddle screamed, his form distorting and disintegrating in a flash of blinding light. The basilisk, momentarily confused by its master's destruction, hesitated just long enough for Harry to position himself. Channeling both wizarding magic through the sword and mystical energy through his free hand, Harry created a small portal directly beneath the basilisk's head as it struck downward. The portal relocated the serpent's attack, causing it to impale itself on its own fangs. The basilisk thrashed in its death throes, one broken fang flying loose and striking Harry's arm before the enormous creature collapsed. Pain seared through Harry as the basilisk venom entered his bloodstream. He staggered to Ginny's side, relieved to see color returning to her face as Riddle's hold dissipated. The diary lay destroyed, ink and magical residue seeping into the wet chamber floor. "Harry?" Ginny whispered weakly, her eyes fluttering open. "It's okay," Harry assured her, though his vision was already blurring from the venom. "Tom's gone. You're safe now." Through the still active mirror, Strange's voice came urgently, "Harry. The venom, use Phoenix tears." "If Fawkes is there," as if understanding, Fawkes landed beside Harry, leaning over the wound. Thick, pearly tears fell from the Phoenix's eyes onto the puncture, the pain vanishing instantly as the wound healed. "Phoenix tears," Harry murmured. "Healing powers." "Harry Potter," came a new voice, echoing through the chamber. Dumbledore stood at the entrance, wand raised and eyes taking in the remarkable scene, the dead basilisk, the destroyed diary, the recovering Ginny, and Harry kneeling in ankle-deep water holding both a ruby-encrusted sword and a magical mirror. "Professor," Harry acknowledged, suddenly exhausted. "You're back." "Indeed," Dumbledore said, wading forward. Just in time to witness extraordinary bravery, and rather unorthodox magical methods. His eyes twinkled as he glanced at the mirror still showing Strange's concerned face. "Hello, Stephen. I see you've been assisting remotely." "Albus," Strange replied tersely. "Your school security continues to impress with its inadequacy." Dumbledore chuckled. "A fair critique, under the circumstances." He turned to Harry. "I believe explanations can wait. Let us return Miss Weasley to her extremely worried family." As they helped Ginny to her feet, Ron came splashing through the water, having decided 15 minutes was long enough to wait. He embraced his sister tearfully while staring in awe at the basilisk corpse. "How did you? What happened? Is that a sword?" he sputtered. "I'll explain everything later," Harry promised, tucking the communication mirror away after assuring Strange he was no longer in danger. Fawkes led their procession back through the tunnels, his Phoenix song providing warmth and encouragement. Using a combination of wizarding levitation charms and a small portal to bypass the pipe, Harry helped transport everyone safely back to Moaning Myrtle's bathroom. In the aftermath, Dumbledore's office became the setting for explanations. The Weasleys tearfully reunited with Ginny. Lucius Malfoy was tricked into freeing his house elf Dobby, who had been trying to protect Harry by sealing the platform barrier, and Harry found himself alone with Dumbledore after the others departed. "You utilized both magical traditions remarkably well today," Dumbledore observed, stroking Fawkes gently. "Few adult wizards could have faced what you did and survived, let alone triumphed." "I had help," Harry said modestly. "Dr. Strange, Fawkes, the Sorting Hat." "Yes, but it was your courage and quick thinking that made the difference." Dumbledore's expression grew more serious. "You recognized the diary for what it was immediately." "How?" Harry hesitated, then decided on honesty. "It felt like the fragment in my scar. The same magical signature." Dumbledore nodded thoughtfully. "As I suspected. Tom Riddle's diary was indeed a Horcrux, a container for a fragment of Voldemort's soul, created through dark magic when he was still a student here." "There are more, aren't there?" Harry asked quietly. "More Horcruxes?" A flash of surprise crossed Dumbledore's face before he composed himself. "What makes you think that?" "The fragment in my scar was accidental, you and Dr. Strange both confirmed that." And the diary was clearly created when Riddle was young. If he was experimenting with Horcruxes that early. Harry let the implication hang. You continue to impress me, Harry, Dumbledore said softly. Yes, I believe Lord Voldemort created multiple Horcruxes. It explains his survival when his killing curse rebounded that night in Godric's Hollow. How many? That, I am still determining. Dumbledore steepled his fingers. Which brings me to a proposition. Your guardian, Dr. Strange, possesses magical knowledge and detection abilities that could prove invaluable in this matter. Perhaps it's time our two magical traditions work together more formally. Harry smiled. I'll tell him you suggested it. Though he might insist on upgrading Hogwarts' defensive measures as a condition. A reasonable request, after recent events, Dumbledore chuckled. Now, I believe a certain celebration feast awaits us in the Great Hall. Hagrid has been released from Azkaban, your friend Miss Granger and the other petrified students will soon be restored with Mandrake Restorative Draft, and I understand the House Elves have prepared rather extraordinary puddings. The Great Hall was indeed jubilant that evening. Hermione ran to Harry and Ron, embracing them both when she learned what they'd done. Students from all houses celebrated the end of the Terror, though the Slytherins were notably less enthusiastic after losing both the House Cup and the Quidditch Cup to Gryffindor. As the celebration continued around him, Harry found a quiet moment to slip away to a window alcove and activate the communication mirror. Everything settled? Strange asked immediately. All good, Harry confirmed. Dumbledore wants to form an alliance with you against Voldemort. Specifically about tracking down other Horcruxes. Strange raised an eyebrow. Interesting. The old wizard is more practical than I gave him credit for. He also said he'd consider your suggestions for improved castle security, Harry added with a grin. About time. Strange's expression softened slightly. You did well today, Harry. Balancing both magical traditions under pressure isn't easy. I had a good teacher, Harry replied. A rare smile crossed Strange's face. Several, actually. Don't forget Wong, he's the one who insisted on those astral projection exercises you found so tedious. I'll thank him properly this summer, Harry promised. When he rejoined the feast, Harry felt a profound sense of belonging that transcended his unusual magical heritage. Yes, he was the only known practitioner of both the mystic arts and wizarding magic. Yes, he carried a piece of Voldemort's soul safely contained within his scar. And yes, more challenges undoubtedly awaited as Voldemort's remaining Horcruxes were sought. But he was no longer alone in bearing these burdens. Ron and Hermione now knew and accepted his dual magical nature. Dumbledore and Strange were forming an alliance to combine their considerable knowledge and power. And Harry himself had proven that the two magical traditions, when properly balanced, created something greater than their sum. As Hagrid arrived to thunderous applause and tearful hugs, Harry looked around at the celebrating students and professors. This was one of his homes now, alongside Camartage and the New York Sanctum. Different worlds, different magics, but connected through him. He was Harry Potter, the boy who lived, and now, truly, the master of two arts. The end. Thank you for watching this video. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video.